Man, I'm very good, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh man, yo, I am so excited, yo, and I want to thank you guys for coming. Making our way. It's not a small trip, you know. So
it was a journey.
Yeah, for sure. But real quick, we're gonna get into a couple things. I'd like to just do like a little introduction, but before we even do the introduction, I just want to, how's your trip so far, getting down to New York and everything?
Man, the
like
trip's
that?
been good. I haven't been to New York since the pandemic hit, so this is the first time that I'm here in a long time. So.
And what was the last time you was here before that? Like before the pandemic?
The last time I was here before the pandemic was actually for the baby shower of my godson.
Oh, nice.
Who just had his second birthday.
Oh wow.
So it's been a minute.
Shit, it's been. How old is the kid now?
He's 2. Yeah, he just turned 2. Actually came here for his birthday specifically. So we got to have his little party.
Right.
And it was good, man. He's developing his own little personality now, so it's really interesting to see how he's like shaping up. He's a super funny kid.
Right. So. That's like trippy, right? Like I feel, I was watching that one anime, Golden Kamuy. And according to the Ainu people, they don't name their kids after like 9-10 years old because they feel like that's when they start developing their personalities and who they define, like start finding themselves as identity, you know what I mean? Or in your case, this is actually a good example. Like your case, it's like finding them like the selves that they started creating for themselves, right? So then that's when they name them. In the meantime, I think they just go nameless.
That's a super interesting concept because, I mean, sometimes you'll hear people who have these, either really tough names or really like weak sounding names that end up being the total opposite of their personality. So you see them big dudes, they call them like tiny.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy about that too? It's like, yeah, what's going on, Big Mike? Thank you for tuning in. You know what's crazy about that? Like, it's crazy how people just like, or they didn't even see you don't even know what the baby really looks like because it's just like a flesh, like a mush of flesh, right? You don't even see there's no like uniqueness to the face, like maybe subtle things, but it won't start fleshing out when they get older. So you're just kind of like basing off like, all right, I'm gonna just name this baby this, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of weird and trippy in a way, but it's like that's what we do, right? We just name kids right off the rip. Like
it's either that or you get people like naming their baby after themselves, right? They're like, nah, this is a second version of me, and I need to name it my same name.
Well, I mean, and literally, I feel like that's why people get name changes too. Because I remember one of my homies, he actually got like a full blown name change, and then like when I used to refer him with the old name, he used to get really mad.
I've known people like that where you accidentally call them by their old name and they give you this look. They're like,
yeah, it's like, bruh, I mean, I just know you by that name, But oh wait, I got something for you because yeah. So I got
brown paper bag.
Yeah, brown paper bag, good stuff here.
Oh man.
Okay, so we got amabuki, which is a little bit on the sweet side. So these are sake cups. This is kind of like so sake cups are basically like canned or glass cup sake.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm keeping this.
Oh yeah, no, my boy Mike, who's probably gonna tune in. What they do is like what he does. He always buy these and then he just keeps the cups and just use them.
That's
a lot
awesome,
of people do that.
That's really cool.
And these are considered more on like the cheaper side, the more casual side, but they are really fucking good. So
that's good, man, dude. I like sake. I told you, I'm a novice at sake, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
I usually serve some while I'm hosting my podcast.
Right. No, I mean that's cool though. I think I need to start doing stuff like that. I'm not much of a drinker, as a lot of people know, but this is the other one, by the way. I think this one is also this is Otokoyama. So they're both dry, but this one's sweet and that one's not sweet.
Right.
So
I'm definitely gonna get into this in a bit here.
Okay, so introductions, man. So you're a longtime friend. We've known each other for quite some time, but
yeah, man, it's been a while now.
What's it called? Life coach, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Just all around good guy. My boy Victor, Pete. I'm messing it up already.
I'm gonna let you go for it.
Pierre and Tony. There you go.
That's the one.
There you go.
See, you got it.
Yo, you literally told me before, and I'm just like, yeah, but Pierre and Tony. Victor, Pierre, and Tony. I never really say your last name like that. I just name you, I always call you by Vic.
Yeah.
But welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you here. It's going to be a little bit till people start coming in, but while we do that, we're going to start talking about your life journey.
Okay. Dope, man.
So I guess we could start from how did you get into life coaching? And that's what you call it? That's your term, right? Like life coach? I don't know.
So I typically, like, when I advertise myself or when I tell people what I do, I typically don't use the term life coach, although that is like the general term that's accepted for kind of what I do, which essentially is like a holistic blend of coaching somebody in, you know, their personal and their professional life, and seeing where those two things bleed over and how to create more effectiveness and more harmony, right? The thing that I typically specialize in is helping, most of the time it's executives or it's entrepreneurs that they are needing to get over some like unresolved emotions, things that they've just held inside themselves for decades. And that's usually the first thing I help them to resolve, is those unresolved emotions and inner conflicts, to increase overall performance as well as their inner peace, just how they carry themselves, being able to be more fulfilled. So that's typically what I do, but you know, there's not a short name for that.
Yet. So you yourself just never really came like with a name term yet. But
I mean, I used to go by life coach. You know, I worked for a large company. In that company, we were called results coaches. So when I worked for there, we were called results coaches because the whole aim of what we did was to help people figure out how to actually get the result that they were going after, the outcome that they had come to coaching for in the first place. So
let's backtrack a little bit. What was the first step for you? I guess, would this be the first thing? And by the way, it was a Tony Robbins company, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
yeah, I was there for 3 years.
Nice. And was this the first thing that you started doing in terms of like life coaching? Like, did you just fall upon this, or this is something that you were like, I kind of want to do this? Like, what was the thing that kind of like got you into this? Was it something that you chose, or this is something that kind of found you?
I would say it's something that a little bit of both.
Okay.
Right? I actually didn't know what a life coach was, and when I heard the term, I thought it was kind of weird.
Right.
Like,
it's kind of like cheesy a little bit. Yeah, I know.
You know,
when I first heard that from other people, I was just like, oh, okay. But then, like, you know, obviously you changed that perspective. But yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
man.
but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So essentially, the way that I got into it is, I actually. The thing that I did before coaching was personal training. And I always knew I wanted to help people. But the reason why I knew I wanted to help people is because it all began when I actually moved to Toronto to work for my grandfather. So he has an electronics company there. I worked there. And I remember I hated the work, man.
Okay.
It was like mind-numbing, production line type deal. And the saving grace that I had was being able to listen to an iPod, right? I was basically told like not to talk to anybody around me, just to focus on what I was doing these monotonous tasks.
Right.
And obviously, like, I like talking to people. so that was rough for me. But basically, I got to listen to my iPod, and I remember I had this book on there. I had one book on my iPod. It was called The 4 Agreements.
4 Agreements,
and for anybody who's never read that book, it's a super simple and profound way to essentially create personal freedom in your life. And that's kind of the book that started it all for me. And one of those agreements was this idea of being impeccable with your word. In other words, like being truthful with your word, what you speak, what you express, not to use it against yourself, but to... Even if you're talking about facts, you're not going to use those facts to kind of put yourself down. It's better that you use your word to kind of move yourself. You don't go against yourself or get in your own way. So I remember I'd listened to that book like 25 times because like I was working there the whole summer. It was super boring, super monotonous. That's all I had. And I remember those ideas, like, they really stuck to me. Right? They got in my mind, in my style of thinking. And one of my best friends that I met in university, him and I, we used to kind of like confide in one another. Okay. And he was venting one night, like particularly hard on himself. Okay. You know, so just to give some context, this particular friend, he has a mild case of cerebral palsy in his left leg, meaning that his leg like kind of turns in. Okay. Yeah, so like when he walks, you can kind of see like, and I remember he kept repeating this phrase because he was in a real bad spot. He kept saying, this left leg is my curse. This left leg is my curse. And I remember like I didn't have any like coaching background. I didn't even know what a coach was at the time. Right. All I knew is that I wanted to help him, and all I had in terms of like that type of knowledge or skill set was what I read in that book, or listened to rather. And I just remember I asked him a question. I said, what if that leg isn't your curse? What if it's your gift? What if it makes you who you are?
Interesting.
And this dude went on to, from that day, he couldn't do a bodyweight squat at that time. A year later, he put on 35 pounds of muscle. He was able to squat with a barbell and 2 plates. Completely changed his body. Not only that, the dude ended up going to start a business, and within his first 6 months made over $1 million.
That's crazy.
He just flew, and I was like, yo, what was that? What transpired in that conversation that had that effect on him? And I remember it was that question. So I started digging in. I was like, okay, how can I do this for more people?
Right.
And that's when the whole coaching opportunity started to, or the coaching opportunity started to kind of show itself to me. And that's pretty much how I got into it, man.
And that's crazy, because what happened there was almost like a switch, right? He was so he had that switch off, and he was like, my leg is a curse, my leg is a curse, and then he switched on, my leg is not a curse, and then it just changed up, and going back to that book you were saying, it was just, you really took it and said, and it's crazy because there's a couple of my questions are actually about words and how important that is,
Yes.
And people, one of the things I don't like, I know we commonly do this because it's a joke, but we tend to crack jokes on ourselves and self-deprecate as humor, which is on the surface is funny, but then you realize if you do it too much, it really affects you, right? You really start putting that certain standard for yourself. You
start believing it.
Yeah, just like how your boy was saying about his leg, and he just kept doing it, and as soon as you turn that word around, now he just took off. That's the reward, right? You saw the change, and that was something that you helped progress. You were involved in that whole process. So from there, when you read the book and you realize, okay, this is something that you're interested in. How did you get into, or how did that coaching job with Tony Robbins come about?
Yeah, so essentially at the time, after that had transpired, I decided to go into business for myself, right? I didn't want to work at this company anymore.
Gotcha.
So my first business that I ever started was a freelance personal trainer. And
Gotcha.
I was just in it because I wanted to be able to help people transform themselves. And I ended up going to school for it for a little bit, but I realized that it wasn't the fitness part of it that I was particularly interested in. The part that I was actually interested in was helping somebody change their situation by changing how they viewed themselves,
right? How
they viewed life, how they viewed their circumstances. So I remember at the time I started also getting into a lot of personal development, and I remember I realized at that moment, I'm not in school for my own reasons. I'm here because my family wants me to be here.
Right.
So I decided to pursue my education outside of school. I pretty much took all the money that I had for school. I dropped out, and I ended up doing everything that I could to go to events, to get myself a coach, to get different courses and certifications to learn this craft of coaching.
Right.
Because there is a whole craft behind it. That kind of gets lost in translation, especially today.
Right.
There's so many coaches on the internet, that don't actually do it by the craft. But the thing is, it's an unregulated industry, which is it's not so great, but at the same time, it's the reason why I got in.
Right.
But I was super young when I got into coaching, but I knew I wanted to do it. I knew I could, do the skill. So I remember I hired a coach with Tony Robbins, and my coach, after a year and a half of coaching together, she saw how hard I was working, how proficient I was becoming, and working at that skill set. That she actually recommended me. She put my resume, at the top of the pile with her director, and I ended up getting into the interview process.
Wow.
So it was an interesting journey because I was the youngest one there. In a 3-month interview process, that was pretty intense.
Wow.
But it was one of the best trainings I ever had in my life, and I at the end of it, even though they cut people throughout the whole process, so basically think of it like this: 1,000 people apply, they choose 50 to go through this interview process, 25 get hired. So it's 3 months long. Every phase somebody gets cut, and I remember getting to the end and getting the job, and I was over the moon, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's definitely a milestone for sure. You know what I'm saying? Especially being one of the youngest dudes to be in that company. And I definitely got some they were a little bit hard on me because I was young, right? I kind of just making sure all right, that I'm worth my salt, so to speak. But it ended up being an amazing journey, man. It started it all for me. Damn, man. And it's crazy because like, I think one of the hardest challenges in life is finding, cheers by the way.
Cheers.
Yeah. I got like a matcha tea and some energy drink.
Okay. That's typically my morning.
Yeah.
I respect that.
But yeah, how's that by the way?
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah, man, it's like, I think, and this is one of the things that we'll talk about in a little bit too, because I still want to get into the whole journey of your stuff, but like, I think one of the hardest things is when people start to figure out what they want to do with their lives, right? Like,
Yes.
I think one of the common things that we all go through is just trying to find ourselves, right? But for you to figure that out from really paying attention to that one incident, after that it kind of just attracted that, right? It was just constantly coming after that, like, all right, you start studying it more, then people start taking notice of it, and next thing you know, you're working for a company just doing that full time. I guess my question is like, what do you feel like help you propel into that position? Like, what are the habits that you were doing to get you to that place?
So at the time when I had figured that out, when I figured out like this is the thing that I want to do, I was 22 years old, and I remember I just got obsessed by it. And it wasn't something that I had to push myself to go and learn or to go and study. Like, I felt pulled by this thing.
Right.
And oftentimes what I notice is anything I've ever tried to like push myself or try to make myself do the thing never ended up actually turning out well. But when I felt pulled by this thing, I'm not going to say that it was easy to do all the work, but it wasn't like a chore. It didn't feel like a drag. So I remember I did all kinds of things. Like, I read a ton of books. I was listening to audio programs all the time, just trying to learn this style of coaching. Nobody would pay me to coach them at the time when I first started. So I remember I was like, all right, well, I'll coach people for free then. I don't care. Like, I need the experience. So I would coach people for free. I was getting testimonials to kind of like build up my
like a portfolio.
Yeah, like a portfolio, so that like when I did get this opportunity that I would get hired, I was able to put that out there. But it wasn't just that. I remember I was making videos. I was like putting them on my Facebook. I was doing anything I could to get speaking gigs, because this actually originally started not because I wanted to be a coach, but because I wanted to be like a motivational speaker, type of thing.
Okay.
That was the initial dream. But I realized along the journey I didn't necessarily like the process of what it was to be a speaker, so it led me down this path of coaching and also being a podcast host and all that.
Would you still consider like doing like a session, like doing public speaking and stuff like that?
I enjoy it. I enjoy the actual act of like being on stage and speaking.
Bro, I could totally see you doing a TED Talk, man. You need to get on a TED Talk. You need to start like,
it's a lot of fun, man. I'm sure one day, I'll go after that. It's but yeah, that's actually kind of how it started. Is I was just doing as many speaking gigs as I could. So like I was speaking for free a lot. I remember my very, very first speaking gig ever was for my aunt. She was running this like small acting workshop because she was a model and talent agent. And I remember, she's like, okay, I'm doing this acting workshop. There's like 15 students. You can come and kind of give them a pep talk before this teacher comes in. I was like, okay. So that was like the first thing I ever did. And I remember like after that, I just started like finding them. Like anybody who had like a group of people, whether they owned a business or they were part of a school club, I was able to kind of tell people what I was up to, tell people, like this is what I'm interested in doing. And I'd say like that's one of the things, right? Like sharing your dreams with other people, like sharing like what you're interested in doing. Because if you're able to help somebody, you're able to add some value to somebody's life, and you do it in a genuine and sincere way, they're going to want to help you, right? Like people want to help each other. So I remember that was the first one, but the second one, I was partying with some dude, and like a college kid partying it up, a little bit intoxicated and whatnot. I remember having this deep conversation with him, like helping him out with like some business questions that he had, but it was mainly around like his mindset. I remember, and he's like, dude, he's like, where are you learning all this stuff, blah blah blah. And I'm like, like I told him the whole journey, and then I'm like, and I really want to be a speaker. And he's like, hey man, he's like, I got this, I'm part of this business group at Ryerson University in Toronto.
Yo.
He's like, we're having this global youth leadership event thing. He's like, you should come and speak at it. So that was my next speaking gig, like 60 people, and it just started building and building from there.
Nice. Yeah, and that's honestly, it's funny that you said that, because that's literally how I get my gigs, like literally just making connections with people,
Yeah.
I mentioned this in previous podcasts before, but like literally nobody goes look up my SoundCloud, be like, oh, I want to hire you. They hire me because they're like, oh, I really like you. You seem like a trustworthy, reliable person. Let's go for it. I mean, obviously you're showing a lot more than just being cool and stuff like that. You're obviously showing some real insightful information. So I'm sure that's a lot easier for people to like, all right, let's get this guy to start speaking with for people. But yeah, so now so then at some point you had your career, you're going through the years and just getting your stuff, your feet wet. At what point did you feel like, all right, now I want to do this myself, and like I don't want to, like, what made you decide that, to be honest? Like, I'm just curious out of that part.
So it was kind of like that classic cliche of like, be careful what you wish for kind of thing. So I remember I used to visualize a lot the success that I wanted, and one of the things that I would visualize is having a calendar full of clients. Because I remember in the beginning, like, it was scarce. Like I didn't have a full day at all. Right. It's like sparingly coaching people. But I remember, like, I visualized like a calendar, like seeing myself book solid, like just coaching as many people as possible, changing people's lives. Like, that was my idea of success. Right. And I remember while I was working for the big company, I ended up going from, they started me off light, as they do with all the coaches, at like, 20 clients or so. Yeah. And I was like, all right, like, I can do this. And then I started getting good feedback from the clients' reviews. Right. And so they're like, okay, like, this guy's doing pretty good. And then I remember I went to an actual live event to help them sell coaching. Okay. And I was like helping out, like really active in it. And they're like, okay, like, this guy's serious. And then, like, next thing I know, it, like 3 months later from there, I went from 20 clients to 70 or 80.
Jeez, in a day?
No, not a day.
Oh, I was about to say, I was like, shit, this guy's a machine.
But every month I was coaching 80 people.
Right, it's like real
3 times a month.
It's like dedicated, like one-on-one.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive in itself. Like 80 people is a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like that would fill shoulder to shoulder in my apartment. You know what I
mean? It was a lot of people. So like, now one thing that it did for me is it helped me get a lot of experience very quickly. Like, in a short window of time. In the 3 years that I was at Tony Robbins, I remember I actually coached close to 4,000 sessions while I was there. Right. So it was a lot of experience really quickly. The thing is, when you have 80 people that you're working with, you have 80 people's problems and goals.
I was going to ask you
in
that.
Your mind all the time.
That's crazy. That's why I wanted to ask you. I was like, yo, so what do you do? Like, I mean, I'm sure you're like keeping a log of like everybody that you interact with, and kind of like put like a general, like, I guess, a persona, like everybody, and like, notes and stuff like that.
Right. We use like assessments that we would use. Like, we had some personality assessments that would help us out to kind of understand this client's
like
style.
Right. Sift through it and be able to organize and all that type of stuff. Type of situation.
So you would know like kind of what their style was. We use something called the DISC assessment. So the DISC is something that's used in a lot of corporate companies that basically shows like different personality styles. Right. Styles. So we use that, but I'd also take notes, like feverish notes on every session. Right. So it was to the point that I took so many notes on these people that I had most people's stuff memorized.
Jeez.
Like,
and that's 80...
I knew who I was talking to, and I knew the details of like our last conversation. Right. Their kids' names and their husband or wife's names.
Right. And that's important, right? Because, in order to like really get a like successful result, you have to really make a connection with these people. You got to really know what's going on with their lives, right? So like, to do that with 80 individuals, like, I thought I felt pretty proud of myself, because like, I work at the gym, I pretty much like manage, whenever I'm working, I'm like pretty much the manager at that point. Like, I remember almost everybody's first name, and I thought that was impressive. But like, the fact that but the fact of the matter is, like, that's nothing compared to what you're doing. You're actually getting involved and like knowing their personal life, their goals, like their issues, their challenges, right? Like, and you're also solving that, right? Like, that's a lot of work. And like, how do you feel like mentally after dealing like with like a whole week of people, and their the their challenges and all that stuff, and you're trying to be there solving it. Like, I'm assuming that got to be like a lot on you. That's, you know,
it certainly was. It would depend on the day. And what I mean by that is, like, based on who was scheduled. As a human, like just taking coaching out of the conversation, as a human being, you're gonna have people that you connect with that will give you a very neutral feeling. Like, they don't add anything, they don't take anything away.
Right. Okay.
Then you have people who kind of take your energy away, and then you have people who actually magnify your energy or like expand it. Right. So the people that I noticed would feel like a drain are the people that I didn't have a genuine connection with. I was able to give them empathy and compassion, but I didn't genuinely connect with them at like on a human level, or like coach to client level, which is fine.
It was basically like a customer at that point.
It's very transactional, and you can get somebody results like that, right? Because of the craft of coaching and the system and how it works. Like, you can absolutely work with people like that, but that has a drain on your energy. Right. And then you had people who you feel like you could be yourself safely around them, even in the context of coaching, and those are the people that would energize you. Right? I've always told people, it's like, people are not draining. What's draining is having to kind of put on a mask and pretend to be something that you're not with people. And there was, I would say, unfortunately, the majority of the people that I talked to, it felt either neutral or like a mask. So those who really energized me, is like they would really stand out for me and like be this huge burst of energy on the day. But that's pretty much how it was. I mean, I'll tell you something. When I first started, I remember the most sessions I did in a single day was 17 people. 17
sessions.
Started at 7 a.m. ended at 10 p.m. With like a lunch break. And I remember that's the first time I ever ate a whole pizza by myself. So I knew, I was like, this is not sustainable. Something's got to change.
I'm going to gain mad weight. I'm going to be fucking...
I'm going to be the fat coach. I'm not trying to do that right now.
Yo, that's a lot of fucking people. I mean, so like... Now you got everything coming through, you're working hard. Like, what I'm sure at some point, because I know you obviously started doing your own thing, like, what made you kind of like, all right, now I want to go for it and do my own thing, like?
So I would say that probably after my first year, right, or after let's say after the first 8 months or so. So it's 2017. That's when I was like in the thick of it, and I would go like 80 clients was like an average, right? But the most I ever got into like in a single month was 107. So there would be some months that it was like 55 hours on the phone, not including admin work. Right. 55 hours a week on the phone. So I remember when I was at that point, I was getting so stressed by not just like keeping up with all of this, but also kind of like carrying the weight of my clients' problems on my shoulder, feeling ultimately responsible. But also there was a lot of like, at that age, I still had a bit of like that fake it till you make it type of energy. While I was doing it, because I was in this mode of like trying to prove myself. Right, I'm this 24-year-old kid who's trying to make it. In the coaching industry, where like people who are that young are not respected at all. Right. So I had to prove it with the only thing that I could, which was results. So I had all that always resting on my shoulders, and I remember I would get anxiety. I was feeling burnt out all the time, and I was like, dude, I don't know how I can keep doing this. So the thing that I ended up turning to, like, I heard meditation was good to like calm you down. So I turned to Zen. Right. I heard Zen meditation's good. So I started reading about Zen. I started actually meditating, and that helped me get more present, like, enjoying the process more. Right. And then one of my clients recommended the book The Daily Stoic, and I didn't know what Stoicism was. Right. But I knew it was philosophy, and I was like, I've always been interested in philosophy. Let me check this thing out. So I get this book, I start reading it every day, and naturally with the book, I would read a page, because it's like a page a day type deal, and they give you like one little passage. So I'd read a page, and then I would like journal on my own. Like, it didn't say to do this necessarily, or maybe it did, I just didn't read that direction. Right. But I would write about what I was reading. And this was just for me. Like, I didn't do this for my clients. I didn't do this to be a better coach. This was like just for me to kind of get my head on straight. Right. And as I was doing it, inevitably I started using this in my coaching sessions. Right. I started using a lot of Zen and Stoic concepts. And I kept using them continuously, especially when something of traditional coaching wasn't working with the client. Right. And as I kept doing that, clients were getting better and better results. They were feeling more and more at peace. They were thinking better. They were more self-sufficient, right? They weren't coming to me for every little thing. And I was like, okay, this is pretty good. And then without even really realizing it, at the end of 2017, or the beginning of 2018 rather, we get these reports of how we did and who was best at what.
Right.
And out of 120 coaches, I was ranked number 1.
Get the fuck out of here.
Based on the client feedback.
That's crazy.
And I was like, holy shit, like, there's something here.
Yeah.
Like, whatever this was.
Like, you don't even need detailed metrics. You saw, like, that was it. Like, all right, with that little shift in your methods, like, and then you started, doing it, I'm sure you saw it on the surface, it was working, but to see that you were number 1 based on feedback, like, that's like obvious. Like, you got to be stupid not to be using this.
There's something here,
Yeah.
Like,
That's crazy, man.
So that really kind of like grabbed my attention. And for the listeners who are not familiar with Zen and Stoicism, I'll just like throw in a little summary of each of them.
Yeah, you could get it detailed as well.
We got time. We can get into it.
So matter of fact, that was actually one of my questions. But yeah, break it down.
Okay, cool.
Break it down like crazy.
So we'll start with Zen. So Zen Buddhism is a Japanese sect of Buddhism that essentially prioritizes meditation practice called Zazen, which is seated meditation.
Okay.
Now, some people, when I give this definition or this explanation rather, will either roll their eyes or they'll be kind of like taken aback by it.
Okay.
So it is said that to study Zen is to study the self.
Yep.
To study the self is to forget the self. And if you try to describe Zen or try to define it, you end up diluting its meaning, because Zen is not about philosophies per se.
Yep.
It's about direct experience here in the now. Like, in other words, to be Zen is to be perfectly and simply human.
Right. Just harmonized with what's now.
Yeah. If you're hungry, eat. If you're tired, sleep. If you want to sit down, sit down. Like that's what Zen is. As simple as you can put it. But in essence, it's all about being present. Mind and body in the same place.
Right.
So that's Zen. Stoicism is ancient Greek philosophy.
Okay.
Now, Stoicism was started by a man named Zeno, who was a merchant.
Okay.
And,
Interesting.
back in the day, he kept all your stuff, all your wealth was with you.
Right.
It was on his ship, and he got into a shipwreck. And Zeno, he ended up landing in Athens after this shipwreck, and he had nothing. Like, he lost all of his stuff. And Zeno is basically like, he stumbles into the libraries, he starts reading some Socrates, and he goes, you know what? That shipwreck was great fortune because it led me to philosophy. So even though he lost his stuff, it led him to philosophy. So Stoicism ultimately is a philosophy that prioritizes rationality, reasoning, and logic in order to solve problems, in order to live a good life or a virtuous life. And it's based around the 4 virtues of Stoicism. So wisdom, justice, temperance, and damn, I just had a brain fart.
Yeah, it's good.
Wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage. So basically, wisdom is the perspective to kind of see the truth of things, learn from your mistakes, be able to question things. Temperance is not overindulging in things, right? Like, just as an example, I'm having this sake. You were saying in the beginning, you're not a big drinker. Neither am I. There are certain moments where I would like to have a sake. Podcasting is one of those. Right. But it's not a crutch that will help me get from an unpleasant feeling to a pleasant feeling, right? That's not the reasoning for it. So temperance is not overindulging, not overeating, not overindulging in your own emotions.
Okay.
Justice is treating others fairly, right? Maybe like Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Roman emperors who was a prominent Stoic philosopher, would say, be strict with yourself, but patient with others, right? Treat others fairly, express justice, compassion, empathy. Because in Stoicism, there was this big idea of like the world as a community, right? So you treat other humans as though they are connected to you, because they are. At least that's how Stoicism would see it. So then you get into courage, and courage is, being able to speak truthfully without worrying about maybe what other people are going to think. Courage is acting in spite of fear. Okay. So Stoicism basically uses rationality, reason, and logic to respond to the events of life, realizing that I can't control everything, but what I can control is how I respond to the events of life. So if something comes my way that is, maybe unpleasant, I can respond with these 4 virtues, and I can use my rationality, my reason, and my logic to get there. Right. And that's essentially what Stoicism is, like, in a nutshell. So the combination of Zen and Stoicism was basically helping people reason through what they had going on, but also being able to be present in their experience, being able to kind of let things go.
Right. So that's essentially how you came about Zen Stoic. You know, your brand Zen Stoic. You know, that's really cool. Like, you know, usually the typical thing is you'll take something like a practice or philosophy, and you just stick with that one instead. But what you did instead was you fell upon something that was good, you used it. Then you fell upon something else that was good, and you used it. And then you figured out, okay, well, I could still kind of, you know, use both. Technically, like there's no wrong way about doing this, right? Like you kind of be able to make your own rules, and then you saw a great result from that. And that's basically how you like accepted this whole idea of like, you know, Zen Stoic. And you know, from the very few sessions that we had, you know, there's some things that always stuck with me. The Zen stuff where you said there was no self, I always remember that one, and that one really helped me, like, because if anybody knows me, like when I was growing up, you know, I had a temper problem, and part of that was I took a lot of things personal. So like, you know, this whole time when you told me about that, like, you know, the no self thing, and we could definitely elaborate that in a little bit, but like the whole,
I think anybody listening is gonna want to understand what that means. Like, what do you mean no self?
So when you told me about that no self thing, like I was just like, holy shit, I've been doing life wrong the whole fucking time. Like I was literally like, and it made so much sense to me, because like now, before, like I'll give you a typical situation, like, you know, old school New York shit. Somebody steps on your sneakers, you're like, what the fuck is your problem, you know? And like in the person's mind, you're like, oh yeah, this person's stepping on my sneakers, they're testing me, they're trying to fucking get at me, they're trying to test my fucking, you know, my gangster or whatever, blah blah blah. And then in all reality, that person was probably just trying to walk and just fucking stepped on your sneaker by accident, right? Like this person wasn't really going out his way to step on your foot and try to test you. But like, because the person, a lot of us, especially like, you know, that old school New York mentality, really lacked the whole Zen thing of not realizing like that's something you're creating. You're taking it personal. You're creating this whole environment of like, yo, this motherfucker's trying to test me, when that person's really just probably not even realize that you were even there, right? But yeah, I'll let you go talk about the Zen no self thing, because I think that really a lot of people will hear that in my podcast, and they need to hear what, you know, I feel like a lot of people I know needs to hear that. But yeah, if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, most definitely. So in Zen there's something in practice called non-self, and the reason being is because Zen pretty much, they believe everything is illusory, like this whole human experience, which, you know, when you talk about something like that, where you're just like, emotions are illusory, logic is illusory, self is illusory, it's not very practical. But the part that is practical is kind of the not taking things personally. The reason being is, like, one of my favorite philosophers, his name is Alan Watts. He died like in the 1970s, but he was a British philosopher that would talk a lot about Zen specifically. And when Alan Watts would describe the self, he had a really interesting way of describing it that always kind of stuck with me. He's like, the self or the ego, these things that we put so much stock in, either by, you know, being in our ego or making decisions from our ego, or you know, creating such a strong conviction around our identity. He's like, they're not real in the sense, like, they're not inherently real. Right. They're social institutions. They're agreements. They're concepts that we invented in our mind. Like, the ego is no more real than the equator line. Right. The equator line, like, we understand what it is on the Earth and like what it means, but it just gives us a relative measurement of the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. It's not like a real line that you can go out and like find.
Yeah, it's literally an invisible line. It's there, but it's not, you know, we can't physically see or touch it. We agree that it's there, and that's how we measure. Right. The ego is the same way. The self is the same way. What is meant by non-self is that when you go into a state of meditation, when you go into a state of presence, you almost forget that there is like, for instance, like when you're really present and you're DJing, I imagine that there's times, even when you're boxing, that like it's no longer like this is Mikey doing this. It's just, I'm just here, like I'm executing. Right. There is no thinking. There is no like think, decide, act. It's just all of those things happen at the same time. Like you decide and act simultaneously, and that is because you are detached from the idea of self. Right. And the idea of self, or like the idea of ego, creates a friction in your ability
ability to make decisions and your ability to act, and ends up making it easy to take things personally, especially when you are married or attached to this made up thing. Right. And then when you think about, somebody stepping on your sneakers, it's not personal unless you've attached part of like the fact that you wear these sneakers to your identity.
You see, there you go. That's the fucking answer I wanted to hear, man.
Right. Many people crutch on things as part of their identity.
And that's exactly why, like, this, when you had told me the first time and mentioned that, I was just like blown away. I was like, holy shit, like we have control over this. Like, the reason why we're getting like this is because, again, like you said, we're creating this certain attachment, and we're believing like, oh yeah, this is what it is, but it's just a scenario or a situation that we just like manifested, and then we're feeding off of that. And it's just like, it really, after when you had made me open my eyes, I'll never forget it. And I'm always like now approaching things like that. And it's funny, my boy, I passed some of the information that the situations we had, like, the little sessions we had, just like very brief stuff, and now he's practicing those things, and it's like he's That's like awesome. He's seeing a whole total different thing. I hope he gets on too, because he definitely has some questions he wants to ask and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But we'll see what happens. But yeah, so now that you figured out, okay, this is my thing, Zen, Stoic, that's a beautiful thing. You got your like own, you figured out your own thing. Now, like, when taking that step to like, all right, I'm going to start doing this on my own and start really pursuing this and start creating my own brand. Like, what made you realize, or I mean, I guess because of the results that you had, you realize, all right, I'm going to start creating this as a brand. But what made you kind of give you that push, like, all right, that's it, I'm going to do this for myself?
I remember, for me, it was this realization that I thought to myself, like, I don't want to be part of something, I want to create something. Like, that's where I felt called to. I didn't feel called to like be a part of someone else's mission. Right. I had one of my own, one that I wanted to basically create and lead.
Yep.
And it wasn't easy, man. Like, being at a big company where they do all the, like, they give you the, the clients. Yep. They do the sales for you. They do the admin for you. Like, they have all that in the background. Like, it was not an easy transition. But for me, it's like I had to leave that comfort to do something that I knew really meant something. Because at least in my eyes, traditional coaching, there's an error there that a lot of the, like, pretty much every client, no matter who I coach. So I'd coach from the youngest person who was 16-year-old in high school that their mom got them to coaching, to like a 72-year-old retired real estate mogul who is making multiple six figures a month just on their overrides, and like has all the money and success in the world. The thing that they all had in common was they were all relying on some future goal. Right. Gotcha. It was always attachment to an outcome, attachment to a future or a result. And I realized, like, this approach is never going to work in giving somebody a sense of inner peace, because they're always going to be chasing, they're always going to be validating their identity or their self based on that future. That's
crazy.
Thing.
That's crazy. You've discovered that too.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way. Like, if you can't enjoy what you're doing in the present, in the process, like, the future doesn't make a difference, because when you get to that future that you're setting out for, you're chasing something else. Like, there's something else at the end of the day.
See, this is exactly why I wanted you on my podcast, because you just made me fucking realize, like, holy shit, we all do that. We all be like, this is my goal in my life. I'm going to go for this. I'm going to take as many years to get to this goal. This is what I got to do. This is my purpose. This and this and that. And you keep telling yourself that. But, through my life experiences, I changed my goals maybe 10 times already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like, if you always trying to set yourself up, you're always attaching yourself to a goal, you're never going to be truly like happy, right? Or not even happy, but truly fulfilled, right?
Right.
And that's so fucking, that's so crazy, man. Like, and this goes back to the whole Zen Stoic, the Zen thing, right? Like, you have to be present. It's not about the future and stuff like that. So big shout out to my boy Alan. I'm glad you're tuning in.
What's up, Alan?
Alan's actually a young coach. He's actually it's funny because it's really cool. So Alan is the youngest boxing coach in our gym.
Oh, dope, man.
And he going through the similar situations. He actually just got his first. He did his first amateur fight as a coach with one of our sanitation guys that because we teach the sanitation guys in New York DSNY, and they just won their match, and he was getting
congrats.
and then he was getting like little passive aggressive, like, oh, you're a young guy, you know, like, oh, you're doing this, you're pretty young for, you know, boxing coach, but like, you know, kind of like low-key hating and stuff like that, something that what you was dealing with in Tony Robbins. I mean, I don't know if they were hating on you, but they were definitely giving you they were giving you like a little bit of like, oh, look at this guy, he's young, you know, like
there was a lot of like, my business is older than you, what are you gonna teach me?
Right, exactly.
And I had to deal with that many times.
That's exactly what he was dealing with. He was just like, all right, well, like, what, you got these guys who are, you know, either it's the fighter that's older or like guys that are like, they're going against that are older. They're just like, oh yeah, you know, what's this guy gonna be teaching me? You know what I mean? He's young and blah blah blah. But you know, what's very interesting about you and my guy Alan is that I don't think it's about seniority. It's not about the time. It's how much, you know, you really dedicate yourself.
How much focus has been put into this thing.
Right? Because, I mean, you and him are a clear sign that, you know, like I like for him as a boxing coach, he's younger, but to me, he performs, if it's not just as good as the other guys, even better. You know what I'm saying? And same thing with you. Like, you know, like you obviously shown that by the whole Zen, you know, the Zen Stoic, implementing the Zen Stoic philosophy into your clients, and then you know, came out on number 1 on top. Real quick, could you just quickly re-explain Zen and Stoic to Alan real quick? I'm gonna get my glasses. I forgot to put my glasses on.
Oh yeah,
I can't
absolutely,
see shit.
man. You do your thing.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get my glasses.
I'll get back into it.
All right, Alan, go ahead. You're gonna here. Just check this out.
All right, so the refresh on the Zen and Stoic thing. You can think of Zen Buddhism, Japanese sect of Buddhism, prioritizes the whole idea of being present, being in the moment, and typically that is practiced through something called Zazen, which is seated meditation. And in Zen, it is said that to study the self is to forget the self. And to forget the self is this practice that, you know, Mikey and I were just going over called non-self. And non-self is the realization that the ego or even the self, your own identity, it's a made-up thing. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't mean something to you. It doesn't mean it's not very real to you in the moment, just like it's, you know, very real to me. But when you're fully present, you're not thinking it's me doing this thing, you're just in the moment. And that occurs typically during meditation. You know, if you're a boxing coach, probably when you're coaching, you know, your clients, you're coaching your fighters, you're probably so present that you forget that it's Alan coaching these people. It's Alan, you know, helping these people work through it. Or even when you're fighting, you know, you probably fight best when you're not even thinking about the fact that it's you in the ring. Like, you're just executing, you're just going, you're just moving. Stoicism is ancient Greek philosophy that's prioritizing rationality, perspective, and reasoning. And the reason why, you know, they do that is they believe that logic and the mind is the best thing to use to solve problems. And they do it through the 4 virtues, which are wisdom, temperance, justice, and courage. And the Stoics believe that living a good life is living based on these virtues, that you can't control all the things that happen in life, but you can control how you respond to them. So you can always respond with these 4 virtues, and you can always use your reasoning and your logic to get to them. So that's essentially what Zen and Stoicism are, right? One's from the East, one's from the West. But I've used them to combine within my own life, and I always say that Zen Stoicism is helping you balance the 2 fundamental human experiences, which are thinking and being. We're either in an abstraction and like thinking about what we're experiencing, or we're just present in the experience. The thing is, you got to be able to do both. Like, we could say all we want that, like, oh, you shouldn't be in your head thinking, you should just embrace the present, embrace the now, but that's not really realistic, right? As human beings, our minds are going to be going. We're wired to solve problems. We're wired to see negativity. So if that's the case, we might as well master that part of the experience, which is the thinking side. That's where Stoicism typically comes in, because, you know, using your rationality and your logic, or your logic rather, would help you to move through problems more effectively.
Yeah, thank you for re-explaining that to him. So going back to our conversation, you said something. So we were talking about you know, getting to the next step, right? So you're saying that you start seeing the fault in how to really successfully coach these people because people are setting goals all the time, and you don't want to use that approach. So that was one of the defining factors where like, all right, let me start changing the game up a little bit.
Yeah. So the way that I'll explain it is through a Zen concept, which I always found really fascinating. It's helped me to kind of to see the real intention behind things. And when I looked at it, and I'll tie this back to goals in a second. Goals have a function, they have a purpose, but if you validate your identity based on them, if you make your direction, which that's basically what goals are setting the direction. If you make your direction your identity, you're going to start running into problems.
Right.
In the sense that once you have achieved that goal, you're going to feel like this diminished energy, like, oh shit, like, what's my purpose now?
Right.
And you're gonna have to find something new to chase, and that can get exhausting, right? There can be a lot of burnout from that, and if you continuously validate yourself based on the goals, it's never going to lead you to a place of self-acceptance and presence. So the concept from Zen that I always use is this idea that a finger pointing at the moon is not the moon.
Okay.
So the way that we can look at that in goals is if you think about what is the real intention behind my goal.
Right.
Like, what is it supposed to serve? And many people will say, well, if I get this goal, I'll feel happy. Or, there'll be a few levels or layers of abstraction. Maybe they say, if I hit this goal, then I'll have enough money to get the house that I want, support my family, and then I can send my kids to school and blah, 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 blah. And then what I always ask is, okay, why? Like, how is that going to make you feel?
Right.
Because everybody always has a personal reason or intent for why they want this. So when you get back to that, most people will end up being like, well, because I'll feel happy or I'll feel fulfilled. The thing is, the finger pointing at the moon is the goal, right? That's the goal.
Yeah.
It's pointing at your fulfillment, pointing at your happiness, but it's not your happiness.
Right. That's not really asking, is this really making you happy?
Right.
Like, what is happy? Are you, like, do you know what, like, does that person understand when I ask you this? What do you mean by that? Like, what is happiness to you, right?
Yes. And most people are defining happiness based on the abstraction of like, okay, when I have this, when I have that, when I'm this successful, when I have, this romantic partner, when I have this many kids, I have this dog, I have this car, like that's not happiness, but those are all the mechanisms of pointing at happiness. But pointing at happiness doesn't equal happiness. Right? Happiness, at least the way I understand it through Zen, is it's a state of total presence and attachment. It's like when you're just in the moment. It's a fleeting state. It's like a butterfly. Like flies in, it's beautiful, but if you try and grab it, you're going to crush it, or you're going to be chasing it, and you're not going to experience it.
And now it's making more sense to me, the whole like an illusionary thing. We're creating all these kind of like, it's like we're really creating this whole illusion of like, all right, this is what this is what I want. But not really realizing, oh, this is what my ego wants, right? Like that's not what you want. You don't want your ego what your ego wants. You truly need to know what you want, right?
Yes.
This is crazy, man. Like, I knew that I was gonna be like, oh shit, every time, like just, but like I just didn't know it was gonna be this real good. But yeah, I guess I just continue. I guess. But yeah, so you start seeing that. You start realizing like, okay, so it's not. So you start asking, you really now you know what you want for your clients. It's like, it's not about the goals. It's about the actual fulfillment. Like,
or whatever it is that they're looking for out of those goals is really where we want to get to. And that's not something that can be achieved externally. Like that's an internal feeling. And a lot of the time, if you trace back a person's goal enough, it usually comes back to either, now this is not all the time, but sometimes it's because of something somebody told them. Somebody told them they weren't good enough, or some variation of that, or they got rejected, trying to get onto their high school basketball or football team, or whatever somebody said to them that they couldn't do. Sometimes it's to prove to themselves that they can do that. So it's based on something that somebody else said that they took personally. Now, I'm not saying that good things can't come out of that. But when you're basing these goals on, oh, now I need to prove something, I need to perform, I need to control something, like those are all delusions. And I'll get into those later on in the show, because that's pretty much what Zen Stoicism is and how it's different from Zen and Stoicism. But the whole idea is like, if you make goals the moon, or you think that they're the moon when they're really just the pointing mechanism at the moon, you're always going to run into this thing of like, it almost works, but it doesn't quite get me there. So I need to find the next thing. I need to find the next thing. what is addicting to people and why there's so many like people going to these self-help events like all the time, and they're repeat customers. Like they even, you were speaking about self-deprecation earlier. They call themselves self-help junkies. It's like, yo, and like they joke, they're like, oh, I'm getting my fix. Like,
and then they're not doing it because they are really trying to be fulfilled. It's really because that in itself
almost works.
Yeah, right. You know, and that's, I feel like that's interesting too, because life coaching, like the industry, is not really well known, and there's not, like you said, there's no regulation. There can be a lot of like, you know, fake life coaches, or not even fake, but like it's not, it's not like truly, like I feel like for you, I see very clearly your goal, or let me not use the word goal.
Yo, I have goals, but like the goals are not my identity. Like, they don't define me.
But as
there's where I'm headed.
Your purpose as a life coach, let's say that.
Yeah.
Your purpose as a life coach is you really want to pinpoint what the fulfillment is, not what their goals are. Goals is maybe at sometimes part of that, but what's really, like you said, why are you going for these goals?
Yes.
And that in itself really shows that you're really about the person and not about the money, right? And I think that's super important. Since, you know, we got one right here, why not we just answer this, since, you know, we could just go into the next topic after this. So Alan says, how do we find fulfillment away from just achieving goals? I feel that's where I'm at. I only get happy when I complete a goal. I'm pretty sure you got this one.
Okay. No, this is a great question, because this is something that I definitely wrestled with. I know pretty much every single one of my clients have wrestled with. The idea of a goal is, think of a goal as you're setting the direction of where you're going to go.
Yeah.
Right? That's the purpose of the goal. Now, how long it takes you to get there, or whether or not you get there, is not necessarily what's important. What's important is, do you have a journey or a process that you love? If you hate the process of the direction that you've set, I would venture to say it's not the right direction. You have to love the process. Now, there's a very big difference between loving the process and liking the process. Liking the process is like, oh, I have fun when I do this. I like doing this thing. I enjoy it. That's not the same. Loving the process, love and like are two different things. Like, think about it, like if you're going to date somebody, if you love them, it's very different than if you like them. If you like them, you're going to hang around them as long as you have fun with them.
Yep.
And when they start to annoy you or piss you off, or you're not having fun, you're out.
Right.
So if you like a process, you're not going to keep doing it.
Right.
When you love a process, just like when you love your partner, you will do things that you don't like. You will go through tough conversations, difficult decisions. You'll push through those things because you have a love for the process.
Right.
So the idea is, you set the goal to set the direction of where you're going, but you create a process that you love through creating constructive habits, things that you enjoy doing, things that have meaning in your life, things that you feel, you know, that go beyond yourself in terms of their benefits. So it doesn't just help you, but it helps other people.
Yeah.
And the exercise that I always encourage people to think about is, instead of envisioning yourself achieving those goals, which is what most of these self-help and personal development things tell you, envision yourself having your perfect, boring, average day. Okay. What does that look like? Because if you can't be fulfilled on your perfect, boring day, it's not that you're not going to have fun or not going to enjoy life or have the potential of being fulfilled, but long term, in terms of its sustainability, you won't be fulfilled, because wanting to be, or being, only being happy when you achieve your goals, you got to realize your goals, they come in spikes. Right. Like, imagine these little lines. This is like the day-to-day monotony, and then boom, I hit a goal. I'm on a high, and then I come back down. I'm working. Boom, I hit another goal. I'm working. Living for these spikes is like living for the weekend. Right. You're spending 5 days.
I like that, man.
You're spending 5 days of your week hating everything, and then you're living for the weekend. Just to have to go back into the monotony again.
Going back to Mondays.
You got to flip that.
So that's how we should be looking at goals. Goals shouldn't be this thing where it's like we're getting through this shit just to get that little fix that weekend, that that little, not real happiness, and then going back to deal with the shit that we always dealing with, and that's really interesting you say that, because that's how I feel at my job currently. I love being where I'm at. like I do the same shit every day. I'm dealing with customers, you know, trying to close sales, cleaning up the place, you know, just, you know, yelling at the young kids, not messing around. But I'll tell you this much, I love it. I can literally do that every day. I do not mind it. And I totally understand what you're saying right now, because now, you know, initially before I got into my job, you know, it was originally just me just making money and just paying rent, you know. I was like, oh shit, you know, they need somebody to, you know, work at the gym. I could see myself doing it. But as I was getting through it, I started realizing, like, holy shit, I feel very comfortable every day. I feel pretty happy. I don't feel stressed out. You know, like, of course work can get like pretty busy, but it doesn't feel like I'm like, oh man, I have to go to work today. Like, I don't have that feeling, you know. Like, I literally feel like comfortable and happy and like, or better, it's content, you know.
Yes.
And now you're making me realize, like, and then I thought about it more, like, now, because you know, as you know, and as a lot of people know, I just made the announcement that I'm going to Japan. You know, I had my own goals, again, what I was going to do in Japan, and now I'm starting to think about it. Maybe I should just find a boxing gym environment in Japan, because maybe that's what's going to really make me happy, you know. And I think one of the key takeaways from what you're saying, from what I'm getting, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you know, is it's okay to, it's important to have goals, but it shouldn't define you, right? It shouldn't be like, you have to do this, this is your path. You know, you have to be willing to be like, okay, something changed. I realized this is actually a better route. Let me switch it up. And it's more about, again, being in present, being zen, knowing what's now, is identifying like, oh, this is what I want.
Yes.
And trying to figure out how to keep this going, right? That's amazing. You know, I feel like, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people can agree with this, you know, I feel like all of us subconsciously experience these things, but we never really know how to like identify. Like, the way you explain it like blows my mind, and it made me realize, oh shit, this is what I've been doing. Like, I realized, okay, now I get it, you know. I love that, by the way. That's so fucking interesting. Like, for the longest time, and as I got older and started getting, you know, some years and understanding life a little bit, I started realizing, like, I subconsciously realized, like, oh yeah, like, life is not about this one path that we create for ourselves. It's actually, there's always like multiple paths, and then you choose one, you start walking on that path, and then it starts splitting up and doing more paths, you know. That's how I've been navigating through life more now. I'm not trying to create these long-term goals of like, oh, this is what I want to do, you know, I'm gonna stick with it, blah blah blah. To me now, it's how I see things. I'm gonna keep, you know, seeing the opportunities more. Yes. And being present, like you said before.
100%. And the thing is, it's like, being able to love the process or have your perfect boring day, because I imagine even an uneventful day for you in the boxing gym is still a good day. You know, like,
it is.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Now, that does not mean you shouldn't strive to be better or to become stronger or improve yourself. That's not those are not the same thing. The idea is, like, yes, you keep training, yes, you keep striving, but you're creating a path where you can be fully present in your process. Like, you can still challenge yourself, you can still push yourself, but it's a challenge that is making you stronger. It's a challenge that you can be present in. It's not a challenge that, you know, you're doing out of obligation, or you're doing because you think other people want you to do this thing. And there's a huge difference between those things. Like, you know, it was a goal of mine to be a motivational speaker, to be a public speaker, but I didn't love the process of, like, you know, being in networking events all the time, or trying to like sell myself as a speaker, or like, you know, calling people, like cold calling, and all. Like, that wasn't me. Like, you know, like, I like this.
Yeah.
I like having conversations.
It's so crazy you say that, because that's exactly how I feel about DJing. You know, I came to realize it's all about like selling yourself and not really the art of it, right? Like, the art of it is just like the last part. All these event managers or event throwers, or these you know, companies that throw parties, they're just looking at the following, they're looking at the clout, you know, they're looking at the personality of the person, which is nothing wrong with that, you know. If you're good at that, by all means, go for it. You know, if you're gonna make money, that's what you're good for, right? But I'm not like that. You know, I'm a very traditional New York City type of dude. Like, I'm all about just being real, not being fake, you know, not trying to, like, you know, I just, now to me, New York City is just like LA now. It's all about status, you know what I mean? And like, as a DJ, I don't like that. I don't like to be going to somebody's gig and be like pretending that I'm really supporting your gig, but in all reality, I'm just trying to support your gig and hoping that I'll get a gig. I don't like that. You know what I'm saying? And that's how a lot of these people have to. They have to like show support to other people's gigs that they probably don't even care about, you know, but they're just doing it because they might get like the in, right? And I realized, oh shit, no, this is not me. And I gave up on that. For the longest time, I was like, yeah, I want to play big shows. I want to play in front of hundreds of people, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is my thing. I love DJing. And like, I realized, no, I don't want to do that no more. And I got frustrated because I couldn't achieve that goal, right? It goes back to the whole attaching to that, right? For me, then I realized, you know what? I love DJing, but I could do other things, and this is what led me doing this, streaming.
Yeah, that can be done in a different process,
right?
You know, like,
and like you explaining this, and what you just said about, you know, the motivational speaker, it like again, you paint such a clear picture how you should be going about life. You know, it's so nuts, man. This is exactly why I have you here, and I love it. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about where you at right now. And then I kind of want to talk about your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu stuff, and I want to talk about some boxing stuff too.
I'm happy to get into that.
Yeah, because I want to also talk about, you know, your mentality with, or your, you know, Zen Stoic stuff, and how you implement that into, you know, practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But before that, let's talk a little bit about where you at now with your Zen Stoic, and what you're gonna like, what you have in store for it. Because I just want that to be out there.
So I've been at Zen Stoic. I started creating Zen Stoic at the end of 2017. So Zen Stoic, I always intended for it to be its own thing, right? To be a hybrid of Zen and Stoicism.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, up until like not that long ago, like we're talking like less than a month ago,
yeah,
it was always like, here's some Zen, here's some Stoicism, here's them kind of together, and this is how I'm framing it.
Yeah.
But recently, we've actually made a discovery, you know, through a lot of hours of brainstorming this, through a lot of hours of testing these things and coaching, as well as, you know, talking on the podcast that recently launched, the Zen Stoic Path, that there is a hybrid there, and that it needed to be, in other words, created for a modern day.
Yeah.
So I'll go through like a little bit of the drawbacks of Zen and Stoicism, or at least where I find the drawbacks. And then how they kind of came together. So Zen, as I explained it before, some of the drawbacks of Zen is that while it sounds really nice and it seems to make a lot of sense conceptually, sometimes it's very impractical to actually live, right? Especially like serious Zen practitioners and teachers feel like if you're not meditating, like it's devoid of meaning. You're not actually doing like a Zen practice. So you can't like talk about Zen like it's in the practice, which you can meditate, that's cool, but like short of like, you know, renouncing all your possessions and going and sitting in the cave or a monastery, like you're not really doing Zen.
Cutting your hair off.
So, and Stoicism was like made to be in the real world, but the thing is that some of the drawbacks of Stoicism is that they exchange logic, or they basically put logic as superior to emotion, or like replacing emotion with logic, and that's not necessarily realistic or accurate to the human experience, right? And it's this constant process of resisting your emotion in the name of logic and virtue, which sounds like a good discipline, but it's not realistic to the human experience. Like, we are emotional creatures, and everything that we see as logic and rationality is really just like our preconceived biases and prejudices that we have in the world. Like, and all logic comes from emotion. Like, you draw conclusions because you had strong feelings about a few of these things, you tied them together, and now you have this logical, rational argument. So a lot of people, or like Stoicism through the years, has been criticized as being like emotionless men, or like men of stone, or were the Stoics. And it's not that the Stoics didn't feel emotion, but the philosophy itself can sometimes be very idealistic around rationality and logic, and not kind of take into account the importance of emotions. Zen Stoicism looks at things as they are, in terms of using both emotion and logic. Whereas like Zen, for instance, thinks that they're both illusory, which, again, like, how are you going to use that in everyday life? At least like if you're living in society, right? Like if you're like a monk and you're living in a monastery, or like you're just in solitary, like, cool, you could probably do it.
That works for them,
But if you're like us, like doing a podcast here in the middle of Brooklyn, like, like this is not going to apply to our life.
You can't be fully
right,
a Zen person, right?
We need something that's going to apply today to the modern day. So Zen Stoicism is a hybrid philosophy that aims at creating what I like to call unshakable inner peace.
Okay.
Now, when I say unshakable inner peace, that sounds cool, it sounds nice, but what is unshakable inner peace? Unshakable inner peace ultimately begins with self-acceptance. If you cannot accept yourself, you will never have a sense of inner peace, no matter how great your achievements are.
Right.
So Zen Stoicism is heavily inspired by a Japanese proverb that basically says, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
You always says, I hear that in your branding. Can you elaborate that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll go into the actual story where it comes from. So
cool, yeah.
There is a story about a samurai village, and a student is talking to his master, and they're walking through the garden, and the master is telling the student about how it's important to live a peaceful life.
Right.
And he goes, but we just finished training. You're teaching me how to battle and how to like kill other people.
Right.
Like how do you reconcile the two of these things? And the master looks at him and says, yeah, like, it is more peaceful to be in the garden, but it is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And basically what that means is that it doesn't really serve you to just chase inner peace or just chase pleasure and things that feel good, because life has inevitable battles and storms that are going to come your way. And if you're not prepared for them mentally, emotionally, physically, like, you're going to get mollywopped, man.
Right.
Like, they're going to take you out. So the whole idea is, like, you want to create a mentality that is ready to weather any storm, and that's what Zen Stoicism is about.
Right.
So I see, these inherent drawbacks of them, and the way I look at emotions is like, I don't think that anybody should dismiss their emotions, nor do I think you should try to control your emotions.
Yeah.
Because you can't control your emotions, contrary to popular belief.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of like this one Zen riddle or Zen story. It's like a short one.
Yeah.
By the way, in Zen, there's something called koans, and they mean basically like a riddle that's supposed to spark enlightenment.
Right.
But this story, basically, it's really short. It goes, there's this guy riding a horse, and the horse is like sprinting through the field. And this dude's like, hey, where are you going? And he's like, I don't know, ask the horse.
Right.
So it's like, the horse in that story symbolizes emotion, whereas the guy riding the horse symbolizes logic.
Right.
So both of them are part of the human experience. If you try to isolate one or replace one with the other, it doesn't really work out.
Right.
It's not really acknowledging human nature. So with Zen Stoic, I do my best to acknowledge human nature in the way that it is, as it is.
Right.
Trying my best not to abstract things. And I'm sure there are flaws in my system too, right?
Yeah.
It's just another finger pointing at the moon.
Yeah.
It's not the moon, but it is a method that I've, built for the modern age. So with Zen Stoicism, the difference is it's based on this fundamental premise of there are 4 intentions and 4 delusions.
Right.
The 4 intentions replace the 4 virtues of Stoicism, but they capture both the essence of Zen and Stoicism. The 4 delusions are also intentions, but they're delusional intentions.
Gotcha.
The reason why I made it that is because in Stoicism, it's about pursuing a life of virtue. Now, virtue, what it meant back then, 2,000 years ago, is a little different from what it means today.
Yeah.
We hear virtue today, and we think somebody virtue signaling and placating to certain social issues, trying to look cool, and trying to show the world that I'm so good. And look at me. Look at me feeding this homeless man a sandwich.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to do that, you wouldn't put it on Instagram.
Right. You wouldn't put it on the camera. Yeah.
Exactly. So the thing that you cannot, you can always show virtue, you can always show achievement, you can always do the right thing in the eyes of others. What you cannot hide from, and the one thing that will prevent you from having inner peace, is you cannot hide from your own intentions. If your intentions are not in the right place, if they're in the delusions, that's where they'll always mess with you. You'll never be able to accept yourself fully because you inherently know what is right and wrong. No matter how much shit you talk in your head, you can feel when something's right and you can feel when it's not.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy because sometimes I'll do certain things, but then there's always that voice in the back of the head I know why I'm doing this, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know exactly why you do everything that you do.
Yeah, that's real as fuck, bro.
So I'll go through the 4 and 4, right? Because basically the way it's designed is that there are 4 intentions that you want to, that essentially will bring you a sense of inner peace.
Okay.
That you'll be able to kind of be accepting of yourself in an effortless way.
Yep.
And then there are 4 delusions, which if you go into this, you might be able to get the things that you want, but at the end of the day, you're going to feel those things. And these are little deviations from the path. So the 4 intentions, the first one is humanity. So humanity is the intention of understanding that everybody is on their own path.
Yeah.
Right? So it's simple things like, obviously, like not to take life, not to take what it's not given, not to, inhibit someone else's path, to respect your own path and that of another person. But also to accept things in the objective. Like human nature is to solve problems. Humans have emotions. Let's not ignore those. So it's appreciating the human for what we are.
Yeah.
Not trying to idealize things.
Yeah.
That's the first one. Now, the counterpart to humanity is what I call dissociation, which said differently could be like disconnection from the experience. So in an objective sense, dissociation could be you get upset because it's raining outside.
Yeah.
It's like raining is part of nature, and because it didn't fit your plans, now you're upset at something you can't control.
Right.
Like you're dissociating from nature, thinking that nature is somehow separate from you, and you're not a part of it, but you're this individual ego, like we were talking about.
Yep.
Like the ego is a dissociative experience, like the self is a dissociative experience. So when we dissociate, that's in the abstract. Now when we do it like interpersonally with people, you dissociate by like being rude to others, like condemning others, or holding contempt over others, judging other people, speaking, like having ill will towards others. You're making the dissociation between you and this other human, who are all part of the same experience.
Shit, that's crazy. Yeah.
So that's the first one. Counterpart. So humanity is the intention. The other intention, or the delusion rather, would be dissociation. That's the first one. The second one is understanding.
Okay.
When you intend to understand, you're intending to be curious. You're intending to have what in Zen is called a beginner's mind. In other words, emptying your cup.
Yeah.
Not coming in with preconceived notions, not like you know things, not like you've arrived already, but you're curious. You're not coming in like, let's say in the boxing example. Yeah. You're not going into your fight like, oh, this person ain't shit.
Yep.
Like you go in, you respect every fighter that's across from you, and you're going to fight them in the same way that you would anybody else.
Right.
If you start getting cocky or arrogant, you're starting to set yourself up for
sabotage there.
Because you're coming in with a full cup rather than an empty cup, right? You're inhibiting your own abilities. So understanding is, empathy, justice towards others, but also coming in flexible, curious. The counterpart, now these are not opposites, but the counterpart to understanding is control, the delusion of control. When we do things with the intention of control, we have to realize that most of everything that happens in our experience is not under our control.
Right.
The only thing you can really control is your own choice and free will in the matter. So what you say, what you do, what you think. That's it. You can control these intentions, but you can't control what happens or what somebody else does or what somebody else thinks. So when we start to get into, well, I'm going to do this thing so that this person does what I want them to do, or I'm going to do them a favor because I want to put one in the bank. I want to put one in the bank, and that way they'll do something for me. I can hang it over their head. All right, a lot of people will typically talk about how parents are like, oh, I just want what's best for you, and I want you to do this job, and I want you to go to school. Like, no, you don't. Like that's the delusion of control. Like, they might love you, but it's in a delusional intention.
Right.
There is some kind of control. Like, if I can have some certainty over this thing, over this person, my child, then I'll feel okay.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not about them. So now it's about you. So that's the second one. Now, before I move on, if you want to chime in, ask any questions. If anything's unclear, like
I'm actually thinking of scenarios that I seen that firsthand, like the parent thing. That's so common. Like we have I'm not trying to put anybody's business out there, but we have this one guy. He brings his kid all the time, and he's like super hard, on the kid, and then it's just like you're doing this because you're probably trying to set him up for success because it's toughening him up, discipline and stuff like that. But it's like, this is not for him. This is this is what you want. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not doing this because I'm sure you care, because you can see that he's really hard on him and stuff like that. But it's like, you're all of this, and then goes back to what you're saying about not being like trying to control stuff, right? It's like, you're doing all this, and it's like you're trying to control it, and you're trying to do it with good intentions, but in reality, you're just trying to fulfill yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And it's like, and Parents do that all the time. Parents always want them to play certain,
like
go to college, go to the school, go to some kind of career, do some kind of sports and stuff like that. And like, to all these parents out there, you should freaking listen to this shit, because that is not the right way of doing it. You're not doing it for your kid. Yes, you're trying to secure their career, their security, but in all reality, you're just doing it for yourself. And that's
right.
And that when you said all these things, that's I see that a lot of times.
Yeah, there's very little we control, and this is inspired by the Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control, which is basically very simple. It's to recognize what you can't control, recognize what you can, discard what you can't, and focus on what you can control. So it's super simple, but the idea is like when you get locked into the delusion of control, or like your intention in doing something is to control. Like some people will do nice things. Yeah. Some people will like you need money, they'll loan you money, but why are they going to loan you money?
Right.
What's their intention in doing so? Is it so that they can hang it over you, or is it because they actually want to just help you out kind of thing? So that's the second intention and delusion. The third one, is something that when we think about it, it's this whole idea of sincerity versus performance. Okay. Right? We live in a world that is incredibly dedicated to performing, right? Especially in a social media age. Social media is the stage that we all perform on. We all try to project something. So the intention is sincerity. It's doing things because you want to do them. Yeah. Not because you're going to look a certain way. Yeah. But to almost be vulnerable, to open up, to be the source of what you want to experience versus asking the world to validate you. And when we are sincere, we don't really care what the world is going to say about us. We're just going to do the thing that we want. And where this is kind of inspired by, there's a Carl Jung quote that says, "The world will ask you who you are." Okay. And if you don't know, the world will try to tell you. So sincerity is like, I'm going to tell the world who I am. I'm going to do these things because this is what I want to do. This is what I feel. This is the process that I love. Right. It's not about the outcome. Whereas performance is being heavily attached to the outcome. Yeah. And most of the time when people are performing, when they're trying to, embody a certain identity, a certain image of self, they're going to do things that, may overlap with some of those other delusions, right? They're going to try to control. Why are they going to control? So that they can look good. Yeah. So that they can look like they're the hero. Right, right. Situation. Like I'm really truly a nice guy, but in reality, you're doing it for your own selfish reasons, if anything. Right. And like we can like smell it from a mile away. Right. When somebody's full of shit and they're performing and they're not actually being real with you. So that's one of those things that beyond a shadow of a doubt in yourself, whether you're being real or whether you're performing, whether you're being sincere or whether you're performing. And that's one of the distinctions that I always make with this is like some people, they take themselves too seriously. Yeah. They get very serious about life, which is an act of performance. Yeah. They want to be taken seriously instead of taking themselves sincerely. There's a massive difference between those two things, because like when you're sincere, you are not trying to be anything for anybody. Right. You're more invested in your opinion of yourself rather than the opinion of other people and you. Right. So that would be the next intention. The final one is discipline versus expediency. Okay. So discipline is not being overpowered by pain or pleasure, not being overpowered by one's emotions. It's to understand that your emotions, there are no positive or negative emotions. Right. There are emotions that are pleasant and emotions that are unpleasant. Mm-hmm. But your emotions, you can think of them as an interaction between your personal individual experience and the outside experience, the environment around you. When you have a pleasant emotion, it's telling you, hey, this is good, keep doing this. Right. When you have an unpleasant emotion, it's telling you, you need to change something about this. Most of the time, people judge their emotions and call them positive and negative. Okay. When you judge your own emotions, you don't deal with them. You shove them down. You try to numb yourself from them. Right. You don't actually take the time to actually listen to what they're trying to tell you. Emotions, in my experience, have boundless wisdom, that if you just learn how to listen to them, right, they can act as your compass and guide you in the right direction. Right. Part of discipline is understanding that. It's not being overpowered by the emotions, but being in harmony with the emotions. Not trying to control the emotions, but learning to communicate with the emotions.
So like in other words, like if you're upset, try not to go so against why you're being upset. Just try to accept the fact, you know, you are upset, and be like, okay, it's okay, like, you know, vent a little bit, you know, bitch about it a little bit, but then after that, just kind of accept it and just move on and stuff like that.
Kind
more
of,
or less, right?
Kind of. Like when you're upset, you know, you acknowledge that you're upset.
Yeah.
You go through your process, like if you got to bitch and complain,
Yeah.
whatever you got to do. But more so ask yourself the question, what is this feeling trying to tell me right now?
Gotcha.
And most of the time when people ask that, I always say that, you know, we have two voices. We have the conscious voice and we have the unconscious voice. The conscious voice is like that salesman in your head that's like, yo, you got to do this thing, you're gonna make so much money, or like, yo, you're gonna impress this girl, blah blah blah. Like, it's the one that's loud. The unconscious voice is kind of like, some people call it the intuition, some people call it their gut feeling, their instinct. That voice is like a voiceless voice. It doesn't really sound so much like a voice in your head, and at the very most it's like a whisper, but it's more of a feeling. And if you learn to listen to that feeling and translate it into some actual practical advice that you can use, that's when you're starting to communicate with the emotion. You're letting the emotion kind of give you that sense of wisdom. Like, sometimes you might ask yourself, like, okay, what is this anger trying to tell me? And maybe the anger is trying to tell me, like, that it's not okay. Let's say something stupid. It's not okay to cancel plans with people that you care about because maybe somebody canceled on you. And that way, you're not making the anger about them anymore. You're making it about your own experience and seeing it as something practical that you can use in the future. If, let's say that's the scenario, somebody canceled plans, you got angry, and then you ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? The emotion says, it's not okay to cancel plans on people you care about. Now you can use that in the future. The lessons that you get from your unconscious voice, your intuition, are never like, this person's an asshole. They're usually things that you can use for yourself now and in the future.
I think I'm kind of getting it now. It's just like, I shouldn't be doing that now. Bring it back to yourself and realize, like, what you're upset about in other people is stuff that you may have been guilty of yourself. Which I feel like most of the time it is.
Absolutely. And the only reason you're upset about it is because you're hiding that shit from yourself. You know, like.
That's actually, and I feel like that's like a very subtle insecurity, right? Like, we're just like projecting it onto somebody else because maybe subconsciously they feel like, oh shit, I done that before, and I don't like when, you know I feel bad when I do it, so like that's bad, you know, like I'm gonna just be like, all right, fuck this person, why are you canceling on me, bro?
Exactly. You're gonna get upset. So the counterpart to discipline is the delusion of expediency, trying to get there quicker. So expediency can come in the form of, I'm gonna try and cut corners, I'm gonna try and skip these steps, I'm gonna try and one up the system, or it can be like, I feel bad right now. So you're experiencing an unpleasant feeling, and you try to create a bridge between the unpleasant feeling and the pleasant feeling in a way that is almost distracting you from feeling this feeling. So, like, to put it in really simple terms, I feel bad, I'm going to go have a drink. Right now, I'm exploiting the pleasures of alcohol to bridge my unpleasant feeling to the pleasant feeling.
Gotcha.
So by exploiting, in Zen, there's something called the 5 precepts. One of them is not to exploit the passions. Not to exploit things like alcohol, sexuality, not to do something that feels good when you feel down, just to get you over it. Because that's what creates dependency. That's what
like addiction and stuff like that.
That's what creates addictions, is things that almost work. Like, this is not going to tell me what my emotion's trying to say, but it's going to make me not feel that emotion temporarily. But what you resist persists. Like, if you don't deal with your emotions, they come up. So when I work with clients and we're working with their emotions, like, these are dudes in like their 40s that we're working with stuff that happened when they were 8.
Wow.
You know, like, and just hasn't been resolved.
And you know, and it's funny because that's like similar to what I was saying with the whole, like, you know, that's why, like, I feel like your teachings is so important, because like you make sense of certain things, and then it really just like opens your eyes, because like the whole no self thing, like going back to that, like it really made me realize, oh shit, I've been doing this wrong the whole time. And then going back to your clients who are like 40 years old, they've been doing things, they've been processing things the wrong way the whole time, and you just kind of like, hey, look, just switch a couple things. You try to do things with these intentions and stuff like that, and then you'll be all right. And it's like literally all you need those like information, and it's like that's it. Now they can go about their day and going on with life to be a little bit better now. It's real quick. So is this something that these 4 things, is this something that you created like yourself, or this is something that you just put together?
So I've actually put this together recently. I was always asking myself, what's the overlap between Zen and Stoicism, and how can it be applied to the modern age? As well as I asked myself, like, what have I learned from all the regrets that I've had, all the dumb decisions, all the times that like I did something wrong. And what came out of that was these 4 intentions and 4 delusions. I ran it back with like each regret that I had, and I was like, okay, where did that start? And it, like, every single time started in one of the 4 delusions. Every time something went well, every time I was in a flow, or like, even if I didn't win or get my outcome, but like it was, a very memorable or meaningful experience, it always started in the 4 intentions.
Did you like make a matrix of this yet? Like, did you like?
It's not visual yet. It's written out, and like we're gonna be presenting it on the podcast very soon.
I would love to see that, because all the stuff that you listed out, it just seemed like a spider web of like success right there. Like that's really fucking dope. Like, obviously I'm gonna track back to this podcast when I upload on YouTube just to like really take notes, because like I want to keep continuing on and stuff like that. I am getting a gist of a lot of the general idea of what you're saying, and I'm like, holy shit, this is a lot of really interesting, like, useful stuff. But like to see it visually and like put together well, like that, I think that would be like really valuable. You know,
that's the next step, right? We got it all written out, but I mean, to put this in kind of like a matrix or like a visual thing, I think is the next step in our, at least our creative development, because to me, like, I asked myself. I tried to boil it down to what was most simple. I was like, okay, if Zen Stoic is here to create unshakable inner peace, what is like the baseline of unshakable inner peace? And unshakable inner peace is basically like you could be going through any situation, and like maybe in the moment, like you could be going through a really shit situation and it sucks in the moment, but you're not going to lose your center. You're not going to crumble. And that's what these intentions are for, is like if you live a life that is engaged consistently in those 4 delusions, when shit hits the fan, you will crumble. Like I'm not gonna say that you will, but it's more likely that you will crumble under those circumstances, versus if you're coming from the 4 intentions, the discipline, the sincerity, the humanity, the understanding. If you're coming to it from that perspective, you will not be shaken nearly as easily as if you're coming from those 4 delusions. The only time that, like, at least I've noticed myself, I don't know if you've ever had this feeling where like somebody calls you out, like maybe they call you out and be like, yo, you're just performing, or like you're just trying to control the situation, and like you're like, no, I'm not, and like you really were, and then you get upset. You get upset because you're trying to defend that shit, and you can't defend those delusions for long. Now the good thing is, like, the only way that you kind of understand the value of the intentions is by having had experiences where you started off with those delusions and you followed feverishly into those delusions. Then you understand the value, because you understand how they crumble. So the good thing is, like, sometimes there will be one-off situations where you will do it from that delusional place, but you can always course correct. You can always like be like, all right, that wasn't good. I was not coming from the right place.
I mean, because we're human, right?
Yeah, because we're human. So you need to expect yourself to like not always be perfect, but this is just a way that you can always check yourself, and there's nobody who can tell you where you're really at. Only you will know, and you will feel it.
Yo, I just want to ask you real quick. You're writing a book of Unshakable Peace, right?
You
got to, man. Like, I'm sure
there is a book in the works with the 4 intentions, 4 delusions. It's actually going to be a very interactive book. So it's going to have actually, you've done these before. It's going to have the micro meditations with journal prompts, but using the 4 intentions, 4 delusions is kind of like the primer, or like the foundation for how you use the book. So I want it to be something that people don't just read cover to cover, but something that, based on how you're feeling or what you're going through, you can flip to a section and be like, all right, let me jump on this.
Well, I mean, look, take your time, because I want, obviously that thing got to be, like, you got to really break it down and all that stuff. But when that day comes and you're ready, you'll just let me know, put me on the pre-order. I'm going to buy the book, you know what I'm saying? Like,
oh, for sure.
Because that, like, I got into, like, reading a lot of stuff and just, like, really just trying to put more information in my head. So, like, obviously, of course, not just because you're my friend, but I really dig what you do.
Thanks, man.
I really think what you do is really good. Again, like, I don't need to say based on my experience, just based on, like, the things that we had done before. Just this podcast alone, I learned a lot. Like, and I'm pretty sure anybody that comes back and watches this, they can say the same, because that, you're giving so much valuable information, and, like, I already have so much takeaways from this for myself now. I have a different mindset, and I really do think you're going to do very well in the future. Obviously all these things take time, and it takes a lot of drawing board stuff. You really just kind of keep testing stuff. But when you come out with that Unshakable Peace book, like interactive stuff, that's just going to work. That's going to sell, man. You just gotta get some good, like, marketing people, and then that's it. You're going to be good.
Yeah, it's in the works now, right?
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, man. So you know what? Let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk about stuff that we really love, and just fucking the art of fighting, man.
Yes.
So I'm curious, how did you get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And was that the first thing you did, or was there other fighting stuff?
Man. So I've been doing martial arts since I was 6 years old. I started with Taekwondo. Okay. I was super competitive as a kid.
Right.
I used to go to tournaments all the time. And I did it for 8 years, from like 6 to 14 years old.
Right.
So that was my base. But the thing with Taekwondo, and like kind of like what formed my whole mentality around training, is that my dad had been the one who started Taekwondo first.
Gotcha.
So he started in Canada.
Okay.
And where he went in Canada was one of the top schools in the Toronto area.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like genuinely good at fighting. Like it wasn't like the McDojo stuff that you see popping up.
Right. It's not about just like looking good.
Yeah, it wasn't just about the money. Like people were actually like trained properly in this way. So my dad, that was his standard. And when we moved to Florida, we went to this one Taekwondo school that was in the area. Mm-hmm. And I remember, as like while I was going there, my dad was like, listen, like, these guys, they're not really that good.
Yeah.
And they're not that good because they don't really care.
Yeah.
Like, they're just trying to make money. Mm-hmm. So, like, we're going to train at home. A lot of the time. So most of my training, like why I was able to excel in competition as a kid, was because like we literally turned our garage into a dojo. Like we had a bag hung up, we had mirrors. Like I was training in there with my dad all the time, and that's what like really got me over that hump, because I was never like naturally good at fighting or naturally athletic for that matter. Right. It was always a struggle. Always had to like work hard for it. Right. So I did that, for the 8 years, and then when I got to high school, I started wrestling.
Okay.
And when I was, I started wrestling in high school, and once again, like, that was a totally different animal.
Yeah.
I was not good at it in the beginning. Okay. I was horrible. I used to get, like, my ass kicked all the time. But I stuck with it.
Right.
Like, there was a lot of things I hated about wrestling, but I loved the process of it, like, which is why I stuck with it. Like, I knew it was important.
Right, right.
And, as I was doing that, like, after my first year of wrestling, I remember, one of our family members, like one of my uncles, he introduced me to this guy that he was training with.
Yeah.
Because he had moved to Jamaica.
Okay.
So he had moved to Jamaica for a few years, and he was training with this guy over there that had a kung fu school.
Okay.
And I was never into kung fu, but they did something there that I didn't realize existed called sanshao.
Okay.
And sanshao was like, it's Chinese kickboxing. So basically, sanshao is like a Chinese version of Muay Thai.
Okay.
The difference is like you can do takedowns in sanshao. Like you can do double legs, you can do headlocks. Like it's basically MMA until you hit the ground.
Right, right.
So I was like, all right, word. Like I can get on board with this because I just had a year of wrestling. Like I have my stand-up background.
Right. You know how to kick a little bit.
Yeah.
Right, right.
That was a humbling experience as well because I didn't have any hands.
Yeah.
So like that's when I kind of like learned boxing a little bit. So I started putting it all together, and that instructor also he didn't teach jiu-jitsu, but he taught submission grappling. Right, like he taught like catch wrestling type stuff. Right. So I got like a cursory understanding of it, and then I remember, I competed in Sanchow for a few years, and then when I was like 18 years old, I joined a jiu-jitsu gym.
Gotcha.
And I just got destroyed when I put on a gi for the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, this person's choking me with my clothes.
Right.
You know, like, this man is trying to fold my clothes while I'm in them.
Like literally folding you.
Yeah, I was like, yo, this sucks. I was like, what is this? But it was so humbling, like, when you get your ass kicked in jiu-jitsu, it's like, you're like, nah, like, I need to figure this shit out.
Right.
Yeah. So I remember I did jiu-jitsu for like a year and a half, and then I stopped for like 5 years. So I just didn't go back.
Right.
And then, you know, when I moved back to Florida, because like I'd gone to school in Canada, that's when I started jiu-jitsu again. And now it's been 4.5 years on consistently with jiu-jitsu. So that's pretty much the journey of martial arts, like from start to present day that I've been on. And you know, I haven't looked back. Like, jiu-jitsu's been my jam exclusively for like the last year and a half. Like, no other martial arts really.
Yeah, same. For me, it's, I'm very similar with you. Is I was more of a gamer kid. I would play video games all my life. So like I was not athletic at all, and I hated sports. I hated gym, PE. I never played basketball. Like,
what do you mean I gotta sweat?
Yeah, like motherfuckers, dudes would pass me the basketball. I just pass it back. Like, yeah, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not gonna embarrass myself. You know, I'm like, come on, it's like it's not that. You know, just do it. And it's like, nah, I'm not into it. But you know, just like with a lot of parents, they bring their kids to fight gyms because, you know, they get into fights a lot and they need to learn how to defend themselves. So I was so I was one of those kids that, you know, just get into a lot of trouble all the time. So, you know, my brother he saw me scuffed up one time. He's like, yeah, you're gonna have to go to learn how to fight properly, because I'm not gonna let you get your ass whooped, you know, all the time. So I was just like, whatever, like, I'm just gonna do whatever my brother tells me to. So I ended up at Gleason's, and you know, Gleason's was cool.
How old were you when you started?
About 18, like turning 18, and then like I stopped. So I was on and off till like 19. Mm-hmm. I wasn't dedicated. I did it. Like, I was really dedicated when I was there, but like I slacked in terms of coming how many times I wanted to come, right? I don't want to put blame on other things, but I felt like the trainer that I had was a little bit too hard, to the point that I kind of like didn't like it, right? And then after that, it was on and off, you know, like I'll come back to it, I'll find another person, you know, do it with that person, that blah blah blah. And it was till when I met Argenis, the head coach and also my boss, at this local gym, which is not there anymore. It closed up. It's Richie's gym, and he had this literally the size of this room. Like, Lewis can tell you, because Lewis was also a member. He had a room like this, and he was teaching out of it. He had a heavy bag like right here. He had like a swing bag right there, and like he had like, and it would get to like 20 people. It was fucking nuts. Like, but
in that small spot.
But he made it work though.
That's
he
dope,
made it work.
Sometimes those are the best gyms.
And you know, it's crazy. But people will come back for that, right? Yeah. So. And then, you know, in the future goes, and then as years go by, you know, he finally like partnered up with somebody and actually got like a legit gym. You know, of course, in the beginning it got slow, but that's when I fell in love with boxing. Like, really, really fell in love with it, because the way he taught wasn't the way that I was usually getting taught, where it was kind of like, I don't know, something about the way he taught it. He wasn't too like hard on you. He kind of like lets you do the way you do it. He lays out the plan for you, but he lets you be like, all right, it's up to you to get to this point. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what attracted me to that, because the past trainers, it felt like they were just pushing me to the hardest, which, again, I'm not an athletic person. And, you know, putting that all in the beginning and having that expectations of, like, let's just say like you're my coach and you've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 5 years. If you have your expectations how you train yourself onto me, I just feel like that's a little bit too much. You know what I'm saying? I just started this stuff, you know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of how I felt. And then with Argenis, it wasn't like that. He was just like, he laid out the plan, and I would, you know, you're gonna do this and you're gonna do it at your pace. If you want to take it serious, go ahead. If not, just do whatever you want to do with this, but I'm gonna give you, you know, everything you need to do. And naturally, I just got into it. Now I'm actually getting ready for competitions. In July, we're gonna do it. Before I just did it just for myself.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm a little nervous, but at the same time, what really motivates me is my guys. You know, like you know, there's guys that are seasoned. All my seasoned like the coaches, they're like, yeah, go for it. And then I have a lot of the new guys that been casuals are now becoming like competitors, and we're kind of like in this like journey together. So I think that's what really makes it more interesting for me, rather than, because I never got into this for competition. That's not my, you know, I never really looked at it like that, like, oh, I want to be like, I want to see how good I am, you know, like of course I want to see how good I am, but I wasn't like trying to be like, oh, you know, I want to be number one, you know, like I didn't care for that. That wasn't really,
because it's more for like the love of the sport, right, like being able to train every day, being able in that environment, being able to move your body in that way. That's the part that you love. It's like competition at this point is like, it's like a bonus.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even like yes, it is like, let me see how good I am, but like I feel like that's not even the priority. The priority is like, yo, I'm gonna just do something new. Like I'm gonna have fun with this thing that I love.
Yeah, because like because I look at my father, you know, I'm very grateful that he still does it and he's healthy. Like this guy is like he's pushing 70 and this guy looks like he's 50, you know. That's amazing. So that kind of made me realize like, oh shit, I found my fighting art, let me stick with this and be like my pops, be like a 70-year-old dude but hitting the bag like you know.
And to me that's success right there. Like, yo, if you can be 70 and look like you're 50 and still like hitting the bag,
you know,
like, still moving, like, yo, that's a win. That's a big win right there.
I'm gonna see my pops soon because obviously I'm going to go Japan, but like, yo, I want to see how he moves still. I haven't seen him, like the last time I saw him move was like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, and he was moving faster than me at the time. So I'm just like, all right, I want to see if he still has it. I'm pretty sure he does, which is kind of nuts to think about, but yeah, he loves that shit. Like that's all he thinks about, all he talks about. But yeah, like that's ideally what I want to be. Like I feel like I'm already there, you know. I already feel like this is part of my life now.
Yes.
But yeah, I think and I think it also helps a lot. And just, you know, your life too, right? Because like mentally it gets me thinking more clearly when I'm like finishing my training and stuff like that. But like actually let's get into this a little bit. What do you apply into your Zen Stoic, into like all right, actually this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Before I get into that, I got a couple personal questions I want to ask you.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you know, it didn't seem like we didn't get that many questions, so I'm gonna just do my questions. Cool. We'll talk about a little bit more stuff and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, let's get it.
So what I wanted to ask was and this is actually I'm asking for my guys too. What do you do? What are your practices, or what do you like? How do you implement Zen Stoic into a situation where, like, because we feel this all the time, like you know that you got to go train, but you don't want to do it. You know what I mean? Like you're just like, I got to do it today, but I'm not in the mood. What do you like? Is there something that you do to like change that mind, like change that mood in that situation?
Yes. So this is actually something I picked up. Like it was inspired from something I heard from Jocko Willink.
Nice.
That's always stuck in my head, but it's also part of that intention of discipline versus the delusion of expediency.
Right.
Discipline is obviously, you know, you said you were going to train, you go train.
Yeah.
Expediency is like, I don't feel like it today, I'm going to take the day off.
Yeah.
Right? That's like you're skipping out on the hard thing.
Right.
But this thing that Jocko talked about that I always found fascinating, he was talking about procrastination. It's like, let's say you committed to working out 5 days a week, and it's week 1. Day 1, you go in there, you're gung-ho. Day 2, same thing. Day 3, you do it, you feel on fire. Day 4, you wake up and you're like, yo, fuck, I am so sore right now. Like, I am beat. Like, I don't want to go do this right now. In that example, Jocko's like, you go do it anyway.
Okay.
But you basically put off your taking the day off. You put off your rest and you say, I said I was going to do it, so I'm going to go do it. But tomorrow, if I want to take day 5 off, that's cool. So in other words, you like give yourself like a 24-hour cancellation policy. That's like one of the practical ways to use discipline versus expediency. Is like, I said I was gonna do it, so I'll go do it. And maybe I'm just going through the motions. Maybe I'm not going to be 100%. And referencing back to the very beginning of this podcast, 4 agreements. Agreement number 4 from that book. Oh, yeah, you're good. Yeah. Agreement number 4 from that book is to always do your best. But the chapter has an understanding of, like, your best is different at different times. It's different when you're tired versus when you're energized.
Right.
When you're sick versus healthy. So it's like you do your best based on wherever you're at. In other words, like, going back to... the Zen Stoic intentions, one of the intentions of humanity and how it kind of like, and how humanity and discipline kind of start to cross over is you play with the cards that you got.
Yeah.
You got to use what you have. If what you have today is I'm tired and I'm sore, but you committed to yourself that, yes, I'm going to do this, you go and do it, because not doing it because you don't feel like it is a form of expediency.
Okay.
It's a form of letting yourself off the hook when maybe it's not time to let yourself off the hook. The idea is like, if I want a rest day, it's 100% okay to have a rest day. You should plan those in. You should work them into your schedule.
Gotcha.
But it's like, don't decide in the moment that you're gonna have a rest day.
So have more like a policy for yourself. Like,
yeah, it's a 24-hour cancellation policy.
it's already past the 24 hours. That's it.
It's like, I said I was going to do this. Like, I'm going to do it for myself. Like, I told myself I was going to do this. Think of it like if you had plans with a friend. I mean, some people, like some people would still cancel at the end of the, like last minute. But like for the most part, if you're like a courteous individual who has respect for your friend's time, you're not going to cancel 30 minutes before you're supposed to get together with them.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a better way of looking at it, because now you feel that like it's just like a contract, right? Like
you made a commitment. You know?
You can't just like, I'm not gonna just cancel my fucking T-Mobile service because that's gonna put me in a bad spot. You know what I'm saying?
like if you had like a billing problem, you probably hit them up like a few days before and be like, hey man, can you move my bill date? Not like past the date and you're like, hey, I can't pay. Right. So the idea is, give yourself that 24-hour cancellation policy. Like put off. I used to say it like this a lot. I don't say it like this as much anymore. But procrastinate your procrastination. Yeah. Like if you're gonna procrastinate procrastination itself.
Yeah. No, that's valid. I mean, for me at least, my experiences, I have those feelings, but I try to give myself enough time to reason with it, because sometimes I'll wake up. What I notice I've been doing a lot is I make my decisions a lot when I wake up. I don't know why I do that. It's a really bad habit. I used to do that. I used to be like, I wake up, I'm like, fuck, I'm not doing anything today, fuck that, I'm gonna just go back home. But then like I give myself time and like revisit, and I'm like, okay, nah, let's ignore what I just said earlier. I think now I'm trying to like do what I kind of did similar with what you're saying. I'm trying to like put a contract with what I'm doing, especially with my head coach, because he's already busy as it is. So for me to fit into fight camp, I'm kind of like putting myself in a contract. I'm putting this like kind of illusionary bind that, hey, because I agreed to this, I'm not going to back down, because again, the cancellation policy, right? Like you said, and it's just not right for him. I'm not wasting his time. Like that's the obligation I put on myself.
Yeah. Cause like you never really feel good about, ditching training at the last second.
Oh no, definitely.
Like that doesn't, like the comfort doesn't feel good. You almost feel like
it's kind of like cheating yourself, the whole comfort, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like that's why that's why it falls into delusions, because like you're not actually getting the thing that you think you're gonna get by doing this. Like you're misleading yourself big time.
It's funny. So like, so when I deal with fight camp, we have I'm gonna put my guys on the spot, but we have a lot of guys that flake out in the evening camp. So we have a morning camp and a evening camp, because everybody can't come to the morning one because they got jobs or whatever. This is one guy, he always be like making excuses, and then like when he says it, you could tell like the evening coach, he's just like, and then the guy's just like feels bad, and then he exerts his energy a lot. He's just one of those guys. He just exerts, like, if whatever he's feeling, you could feel it so much. So he's just like this, and it's like, and now I'm thinking about him, like, yeah, you see, like, you're doing this so you could get off easy, but now you just feel bad. Like, why would you even put yourself in this position, bro? Like, you look upset now because you feel guilty. You did all this. It's like, and it's funny because he said he had to dip out early, but he felt so guilty. He was standing around trying to like feel better about it because obviously the coach was feeling like exerting his energy. So he was standing around and just trying to be like, yo, come on, like, you know, like don't be mad.
Yeah, man.
And the whole time he was trying to get off, I'm like, yo, bro, you could have just finished up your workout this whole time.
100%. Because, I mean, think about let's think about those delusions for a second, right? That's expediency, that's a performance, that's control. Shit, that's dissociation. Like not realizing that, like, yo, you're not the only one here going through these feelings. Like, so it's all four in one. Like, no wonder the dude's standing around feeling like shit because, like, of course you could have trained,
right?
But instead you chose that way to go about it, those reasons to go about it. So it's like, you know, sometimes yes, maybe you need to limit yourself.
You know, I'm gonna use that too when people say that to me, like just to give them a better perspective on it. Like, you sure you want to quit? Because then you're gonna just feel bad. You know what I'm saying? Don't do that to yourself.
Like, how are you gonna feel
when you don't do it? Yeah, like, you know what I mean? No, that's actually a really interesting approach, man. I love that. I'm gonna finish up with a couple of these questions.
Yeah, for sure, man.
This is actually really what I really wanted to ask. Top 3 words that come to mind, that comes to your mind, that we should take out our vocabulary or sayings.
I got phrases, not specific words.
Yeah, it could be words or sayings.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to.
Okay.
Get that shit out of your vocabulary.
Why would you have to?
When you say shit like I have to, like I have to do this thing, I have to start being more this way, I have to let this go.
Yeah.
What you're implying is that you don't have a choice in the matter. Like, that language is saying I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I have to do this thing. I must. And the thing is, you do have a choice, so you're bullshitting yourself by saying I have to. So instead you would switch that out for I choose to.
Gotcha.
Right? Like, that for sure is one of those things. It's like, every time you say it, you undermine your own free will.
Yeah.
So I have to get that shit out. I choose to.
Gotcha. Because
you want to, in your speech, in your words, acknowledge your sovereignty of choice in the matter, your own free will.
Yeah. That's a good. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So I guess number 2, what you shouldn't say.
Try.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that one up because I that's the one you told. I remember. It's similar to try because I said I should. I said that to you, and then you corrected me with that. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, try and should.
Yeah,
they're in the same family.
Yeah.
But I'll try is basically like, I mean, this has been quoted in movies and a bunch of other stuff, but like it's very true. Like, it's cliche because it's true, but it's like when you try to do something, you're having the intention to fail. You're having the intention to not do it. Like, everybody here knows, like, when a friend is like, yo, you should come out tonight, you're like, yeah, man, I'll try and make it. Like, you're like,
you're definitely
like, I'm not fucking going out.
Yeah. And that person knows, this guy's not coming. This motherfucker ain't coming, bro.
Nah, he's
Fuck
not
out of
here. So I'll try. And then the other one is, I mean, you just said it there, should. Or like saying to yourself, I should do this, I should do that. What I find happens with most people when they say I should, with any of those actually, with I have to, I should, I'll try. What ends up happening is, like, the acknowledgement of what you need to do gives you enough satisfaction to not have to do it.
Right.
Now, let's say we're on a scale of 1 to 10. Doing it would be a 10. Not doing anything at all would be a 1. If you're saying to yourself I should, that's gonna give you like a 6.
Right.
Of like, I'm in the positive realm of like knowing what I'm supposed to do, but I ain't gonna do it. But a 6, I'll settle for that shit.
It's like a crutch. It's like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna say I should because it makes me feel like, okay, I acknowledge it, you know. Yeah, you know, it sounds like it's like a cheap attempt at it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, but I'm already giving up at that point.
It's the same thing with try, right? Like, you know, you could always go back to Yoda. You know, like, do or do not. There is no try. Like,
right.
That's a dope quote, man. Like, there's for a reason. And when you say should, it's like either say like I will or I won't.
Gotcha. Right. That's it.
Like there's no reason to bullshit yourself. There's no reason to perform to other people. Like, if you're not going to do it, just say you're not going to do it.
And it's like I already sense the strength in that already. You know what I'm saying? When you just said that, I will or I won't. Like, I just feel like that's just so much stronger than I try.
Yeah, it's okay to say no to people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, just
don't be afraid.
If you're not intending on doing it, don't say it so that somebody's going to be happy. Like, the momentary disappointment that other person might have for you in that moment is far less than the consistent, like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I should do it. I'll try to do it. And, like, dragging that shit out over time.
Yo, it's crazy because I had a friend like that. You know, he's working on himself a lot now lately, and I'm very grateful that he takes some of the words, because, like, you know, just like I see a lot of him in myself that, you know, I wasn't able to learn these stuff from, like, a mentor or, like, a parent. I had to, like, figure it out on my own. So I'm trying to give him all the knowledge and share that with him. So, like, but one of the things he does a lot, he'll, like, you know, we'll talk about something, we'll agree with something, and I'd be like, you sure that's okay with you? Like, this is our, you know, this something that you want to do? He'd be like, yeah, I'm down for this, you know, and he'll say it with enthusiasm. And in all reality, he wasn't. I'm just like, bro, why would you do that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want you to do something that you don't want to do. You got to let me know, you know, like, there's nothing I can do to not tell you not to do, you know, there's nothing I could do if you're going to say, okay, and even be, like, down with it, right? So, yeah, it's much more damaging than,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, this is going on a different subject matter, but just like something that you can do instead in that situation. Two different things. Number one is, if somebody says yes to you, to make sure that they're legit and they actually mean what they're gonna say. Yeah. Ask them how they're gonna actually do it. Okay. Or, like, yes means nothing without how. That comes from Chris Voss, former FBI hostage.
Yeah. I love that book, by the way.
It's an amazing book. So, like, these both come from his book. Either ask them how, or if you're gonna ask them if they're down for something, I usually ask it where the answer I'm looking for is not yes but no, because when somebody says yes, they're either saying it to perform, or, like, to perform so that, like, you'll stop talking, or stop asking them. But what happens when you ask somebody a yes-oriented question is they sometimes feel trapped because they know that you're looking for a yes. So either they feel uneasy and they're like, I don't want to answer. So you start to kind of break rapport. You make them feel like they're getting into something that they're not sure what they're signing up for.
Right.
So instead, if you ask a no-oriented question, no is boundaries, no is protection. Right. So it's like, if you're going to ask them, like, yo, are you going to come train 3 times this week, is different than, are you going to miss training this week?
Right. Yeah. That's fucking, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Very big difference in terms of how people feel.
Yeah, you know, and I feel like that's so common too. Like, a lot of us are just more like, just want to say yes just to make the person feel content, rather than just really just truthfully just saying it. And I don't, like, I mean, I get why people are afraid, because, you know, they don't want a bad reaction, but, like, you know, in reality, it's just going to make things a lot worse. I just feel like,
usually, like, if I'm asking, like, how, or, like, if I'm trying to confirm something, I'll often ask, do you have any objections to this? Like, is there anything here that doesn't make sense?
Okay. All right.
Like, are you against any of this?
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind, because that, you know,
works wonders.
Yeah.
Makes people feel more comfortable and makes your communication, like, feel
right, rather than saying you sure, because I feel like when I say you sure, it's just like asking for another yes or no question, rather than right. Gotcha. That's actually, I'm glad that you told me that, because I actually need to know that, because I work with, because, you know, especially when you're trying to work and do, like, business, and you're doing business with people, you know, you got to make sure that aligns, you know, because, like, there are times I had situations where, again, my boy, he's also works with me, it just didn't work out, because I'm asking him, it's okay, yes or no, and it's always a yes, and it was in reality no. So yeah, framing that, that's definitely, it makes a lot more sense framing it that way.
Yeah, here's one example. Like, just think about how you feel, and anybody here who's listening, think about how you feel with these 2 questions. Do you want to be a champion?
Right.
That's question 1. Do you want to keep performing less than your potential?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference in feeling between those two questions?
Well, the champion is like, it's an easy yes.
Yeah, like, you know, everybody wants to be a champion.
Yeah, that's like an easy yes. And the second question again? I'm sorry.
Do you want to keep performing at less than your potential?
I feel like that's also, I mean, that's, you have to like think about that a little bit more. But I'm going to say no, obviously. Like, I don't,
You stop and think about it.
Yeah.
It's not an instant reaction like, this is the obligatory answer. It's like...
This guy.
It's like, no, I don't want that. And it's like, I need to fucking start training. Versus, like, I want to be a champion is like, you got them attached to the outcome versus thinking about what they need to be doing now.
That's fucking dope, man. Yo, you see, that's why you're fucking good, man. Okay.
Thanks, man.
Okay, so I know you said some already, but the opposite of that, top 3 words or sayings that you should always keep in your vocabulary.
So I choose to.
Okay.
I will. Or, well, this one depends on what direction you use it in. I am is an identity statement. Now, we talked about before how, like, the identity is something made up, but the fact of the matter is, like, as a social institution, we still agree with it. It's still very real to us in our everyday life. When we take a step back and get objective, you know, to kind of disconnect from things, cool. Yeah. We can say the non-self thing. But in everyday life, we still use this identity, this self-concept. Yeah. So... when you're using the words I am, just make sure that whatever you're going to associate to that identity that you're following and basing your actions off of is something constructive, is something that is working in the direction. Right. So this is not so much of like you need to use these words. This is like the way you use these words matters.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah,
like, so
that makes so much sense.
If you like self-deprecate, you're joking around, you're like, oh, I'm such a piece of shit, or I'm an asshole. Like, you know, watch what you say. Like, don't be saying that shit too much. Right. Because eventually you're going to start believing it yourself, or you're going to start associating that to your identity and to your actions and like the decisions that you make. If you're going to say I am, make sure you're associating that to things that you want to be or that you're aspiring towards, not just, you know, thinking to yourself like, oh, well, I'm so stupid or I'm this. Right. You want to be careful of that.
Last question, and then we're gonna wrap this up after this one. I mean, obviously we're gonna plug some stuff of your stuff too, but all the guys that are newcomers at my gym, the young fighters that are getting into their first fight, do you have any words for them to keep on pushing and get the best results that they can get
in the fight or in their training?
Training.
Okay, so like while they're actually training.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I guess you could do both. Yeah. So
right,
it's the training.
Let's start with the fight, and then I'll go into the training.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Because the reason why you train is to be able to get to this point. Yeah. But your whole idea, like the whole mindset that you want to have going into your fight, is don't think. Okay. Execute.
No.
Just do what you trained.
Yep.
You're not in the fight. All you have is your choices, what you've trained, what you've built yourself up to in that to that point in time. So don't think.
Don't think about it. Just do it.
Just do it.
Okay.
Right. Nike. Pow. Now, when it comes to training, the idea when it comes to training is I'll bring it back to that Zen Stoic intention. When you train, you give a sincere effort. It's not about giving a serious effort. It's not about trying to do more than you think you can, just
impressing
to
others,
impress others, or even to prove to yourself you're not there to perform. You're there to give a sincere effort. If I told you, to bake this cake, you have to put the oven at 350, but then you thought, fuck that, I'll bake the cake faster. I'm gonna put the oven to 500 degrees. You're not going to bake a good cake. You're going to burn the shit out of that cake, and you don't want to do that to yourself in the gym. You train with a sincere effort, an effort that is acknowledging where you're at that day and where you're at in your training progression, and you do that so that when you get into the fight, you are not performing, but you are, again, fighting from a place of sincerity, which is where you'll be able, if you're truly fighting from a place of sincerity, you'll be present in the fight, you'll execute, you won't think, you'll feel, and you'll move and decide at the same time. You'll be in your Zen.
Dope, man. Thank you so much. Real quick, let's do some plugs real fast. So how can they find your podcast and your services?
So for the podcast, the Zen Stoic Path, it's going to be on all of the major platforms. So Apple, Spotify, Google, you'll be able to find all of those.
Gotcha.
So the Zen Stoic Path.
Gotcha.
There is a previous podcast that we did with Zen Stoic called the Zen Stoic Podcast.
Gotcha.
And that's an older version, but there's like 188 episodes. So feel free to go check that out too. If you've binged through all the content, but Zen Stoic Podcast and the Zen Stoic Path.
Okay.
And then zenstoic.com is where you can find me, _ Zen Stoic on Instagram, or my name, Victor Pierantoni, on Instagram. If you want to follow me personally, I put a lot of Zen Stoic stuff on my personal page as well.
Awesome. Yo, it's been a pleasure, an honor, and yo, fucking... You already changed my mentality once again, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
man. I would like to say that I would like to have you a guest another time. I would like to do this periodically. We're
gonna do this in Japan, bro.
Yo, yeah. Yo,
I'm coming.
What's sick too? I was thinking about it. I just realized you have a good mic. I have a good mic. Like, we could literally just do a video call, so we would be able to do podcasts
virtually and have stellar audio.
Yeah, that's because that was just my only issue about video calls.
No,
right?
you don't got to worry about it with me, man.
All right, bro, man. All right, bro. I'm so hyped. I really love it. I will link all the his information in the YouTube links. I'm going to put it in the description. Make sure you follow him on Spotify, Instagram, Apple Music. Check out his website. If you want a consultation, reach out to him. I guarantee you just have 30 minutes with him, he's going to convince you. So check him out. Other than that, man, appreciate everybody locking in, asking questions. We're always going to be doing, again, we're probably going to be doing this another time. I will be on his podcast pretty soon too, so check that out. Right. But yeah, man, appreciate all y'all. We're out of here. Peace.
All right, guys.
All right,
thanks.
Man.